Hello and welcome to the 2018 Actual Tech Media Converged and Hyperconverged EcoCast event. On today's event, we're excited to be joined by Nutanix, Nutanix, Pure Storage, Maxta, and Scale Computing. My name is David Davis, and I'm happy to be your moderator on today's event. I'm a 9-time VMware V expert, been in the industry a long time, writing, blogging, speaking about all forms of enterprise technology, and I'm proud to be part of Actual Tech Media, where we had this great idea to bring a lot of innovative enterprise technology companies together on a single event and to help educate the world of IT professionals about all these great enterprise technology solutions that can help to make your life more efficient, help save your company money, and help to make your business as agile and scalable as possible. And that's really what today's event is all about when it comes to convergence and hyperconvergence. And while you're learning about innovative enterprise technology, you have the chance to win some very cool prizes, which I'll be talking about in just a moment. So before we get into it, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to cover. First off, on today's Converged and Hyperconverged EcoCast, as I mentioned, we have 5 different presenters, some of the hottest companies in the space today. Each will speak for roughly 30 minutes, and then we'll do roughly 3 to 5 minutes of live question and answer. This is not a competition between the presenters. There's no winner being selected here today. It's an educational event, so we want this to remain a positive event, and we've asked the presenters to focus on what differentiates their product, their features, and what's their unique value proposition. So during the event, I'll be asking you, the audience, a few poll questions about your company, your company's industry, and whether you're interested in some of the solutions that you've seen. I appreciate your help in answering those types of questions. I also want to point out that on your console there, you can drag or maximize the presentation window to make it larger. So I recommend that you do that right now. Just like a windowed operating system there, you can click the maximize button to maximize that slide window. And that way when the presenters play videos or they do screen shares, you can see those presentations much better. So I mentioned that we have prizes to give away. We have 5 $500 Amazon gift cards. I'll be covering those prizes and the requirements to win those later in the next couple of slides. I also want to point out that if you have questions, we encourage you to ask those questions. Use the question box, as much as you would like. We've got experts on this event. I'll be answering questions myself, but we have tons of experts, systems engineers, vice presidents, CTOs, people with many, many decades of experience. So they're prepared to answer your questions as well. And then we have social. We'll be talking about the event over on Twitter. The hashtag for the event is CIEcoCast, and you can actually tweet directly from your console there. The first time that you do that, Twitter will ask you for your Twitter username and password. Those are kept just between you. And then when you tweet directly from your console, the hashtag will be automatically appended to anything you tweet. You can also email the webcast to your friends or colleagues directly from the console as well. If at any point you have trouble with the presentation, maybe hearing it or seeing it, 9 times out of 10, if you just simply push refresh on your browser, that will resolve any sort of problems. If that doesn't work, feel free to use the questions box to ask us about the trouble. And as I said, this is a live event, so things can and do go wrong. Hopefully everything just goes perfectly today and there aren't any troubles to speak of. And then finally, the resources there on your console. We've got 5 resources from today's sponsors listed there in the resource list. They handpicked, and I recommend that you check those out. They're all PDF documents you can simply download, read at your leisure, share with friends. So when it comes to prizes, as I said, we have 4, sorry, let me correct myself. I said 5 earlier. It's 4 $500 Amazon gift cards to give away. So we'll be giving those out after the second presenter and then in between every presenter all the way to the end of the event. Now, when it comes to being eligible to win those Amazon $500 gift cards, you must be present on the live event to be eligible. Winners have the option to make a donation to a selected charity. If you have won more than a certain amount from us during the year, you have to fill out an IRS W-9 form and give that to Actual Tech Media. That's an IRS requirement. We will reach out to prize winners after the EcoCast via email. If you would like to read the full legalese, prize terms and conditions, it's over on our website, actualtechmedia.com. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it says prize terms and conditions there. Now, we love to give money away to charity, so if you win one of the gift cards and you say, I really want to help somebody out today, these are the selected charities that we've been supporting through these events that we've been doing over numerous years, and we've given away thousands to charity, so we would appreciate your support if you'd like to give away your gift card to charity. Now, I mentioned social media. The hashtag for today is CI EcoCast, stands for Converged Infrastructure EcoCast. As I said, this event is produced by Actual Tech Media. You can follow us on Twitter, and I am David M. Davis. You can follow me on Twitter as well. I'll be tweeting about the event. All right, you can subscribe to Actual Tech Media over on our YouTube page. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. We have an iTunes podcast called 10 on Tech, and of course our Facebook page as well. So check those out. Hope you'll subscribe and learn more about our innovative technology that we're talking about all the time. All right, so before we jump into it with our first presenter, and that is Unitrends, I just want to give kind of a little bit of level setting presentation here, and I think it's just 3 slides, and kind of set the stage for what we're about to talk about in this EcoCast event. So I was a former IT manager for many years, a system administrator. I implemented virtualization. We had storage challenges. Man, I wish that we had converged and hyperconverged infrastructure back then, because it just wasn't available to us. But I know that today, every IT shop, every IT person I talk to, no matter the size of the company, large or small, they're struggling to find ways to achieve greater efficiency, greater agility, greater scalability. And they're continuing to be pushed to do more with less staff and less money. So the business is saying, yeah, whatever we spent in IT last year, let's just cut that in half, and let's not hire any more people. And oh, by the way, let's double the number of users and applications, all at the same time. So IT people are just pulling their hair out at many shops, at many companies that I talk to, and looking for solutions as to how are they going to do this? How is this even going to be possible? Well, in my opinion, one of the many innovative IT solutions out there to help make this possible is through convergence and hyperconvergence. Both of these bring efficiency, agility, scalability, of the staff, and the cost savings that so many companies out there need. And when it comes to exactly what hyperconvergence and convergence are, there's many different definitions out there. The definitions are going to vary greatly on exactly who you ask. But the important thing is that convergence and hyperconvergence in general are any technology solution that combines data center hardware and software in such a way to provide greater efficiency, agility, and cost savings for the IT organization and for the company. So it helps you to solve these challenges that I'm talking about, and the challenges that I'm sure many of you are dealing with out there today. So I'm excited on today's event to have some really innovative technology solutions in the area of convergence and hyperconvergence. You'll hear about hyperconverged data protection from Unitrends, hyperconverged enterprise cloud from Nutanix, converged solutions from Pure Storage and Cisco, and the latest innovations in hyperconvergence from Maxta and Scale Computing. So tons of great presenters on the event today. And before we jump into it, just a few quick poll questions for you out there in the audience. And I'm going to share the results of these poll questions with you. So the first one here is, how many people work at your company? Should be a pretty quick, easy question to answer. You just answer it right there in your slide area. Just select the radio button that corresponds to your company's size. All right, so I'll give you a moment to do that. And please don't type the answer into the questions box. Just select the range of the company in there. All right, let me share the results of that with you. All right, looks like 23% are 10,000 plus. Some really big companies being represented on the event today. That's That's excellent. Really great to hear. 2,500 to 5,000, that's 15% of the companies on the event today. And 100 to 500, that's also 15% of the companies on the event today. And it goes all the way down to 1 to 25, and that's 5% of the event, the attendees on the event today. So small companies represented all the way up to some very large companies and really everything in between. So let's do our next poll question. We've just got a couple more. So this question is, how many people work in your IT department? All right, hopefully you've had a chance to answer that question. Let me go ahead and share the results with you. All right, and the results here, let's see, we've got one-person shops, we've got more than 100 people, which is 32%, and then 20% are 2 to 5 people. It's a little bit all over the map there, which is really great. Again, lots of good-sized IT shops represented on the event today. All right, one more poll question, and this is a little bit of a long one, so I'll leave it up there a little bit longer, and that is, what is your industry vertical? So if you don't see your vertical, just scroll down the list on the right side of the slide page there. All right, I'm going to leave that question up for just a moment and reconnect my audio here for just a second. We're having an audio glitch. Hang on for just a second while you answer that question. I'll be right back. Can everyone hear me? Yes. All right. Audio has been reconnected. Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for your patience on that. So let's get going with the event here. All right. So the results of this industry vertical poll. We've got 13% healthcare. We've got all the way down to 24% technology, 8% finance and banking. Lots of really good distribution here across all different industry verticals. So that's the demographics of the folks who are on the event today. Sorry for the rough start here with a little audio blip, but as I said, we've got some really great presentations lined up for today. Now, I understand that we are waiting for our first presenter. We are connecting his audio now. So I hope you'll have a little bit more patience with us. Give us just a moment.
Hello, everybody. My name is Max Lindauer. I'm a solutions engineer at Nutanix. Sorry for the trouble with the audio earlier. I was having a hard time connecting, but going to be presenting a little bit about the Nutanix backup solution and how we will be a great addition to a hyperconverged infrastructure in your IT environment.
Max, thanks for being on.
So just in terms of a little high-level overview of what's going on in the IT world at the moment, constantly IT environments are changing faster than ever. Not only are they changing and what tools and hardware and expectations are constantly fluid, and IT professionals are expected to be able to handle more expectations in terms of performance and business continuity and minimizing downtime and everything along those lines. So the general theme here is that IT professionals are required to do more with less. They have less budget, they have less resources, they have less headcount, but they have incredibly growing data sets and expectations. Sorry about that, guys. Some mix-up with the audio. Okay, let's get back on the horse here. Okay, so the basic theme is that the data sizes and the amount that IT professionals have to handle is increasing at a much faster clip than the rate of the addition of IT professionals into the space. This is something you guys are all intimately familiar with. And not only you guys have to manage more data, more infrastructure, and have higher expectations, but you are facing more threats from external forces, whether it is ransomware, which has caused a tremendous amount of downtime and business loss, especially over the past couple years, where ransomware as a service has even been floating around in the black market, where you don't have to necessarily be the most, white hat hacker in terms of, capabilities, that you can just go and shop around for some ransomware services. So what this ultimately affects businesses is that they're not able to run as smoothly, and their downtime causes a loss in revenue, obviously. Just an example here, there was a data center outage for Delta Airlines. It cost the company over $150 million, right? A single data center outage can be incredibly expensive depending on the scale of the business, and every minute is incredibly vital in getting back up and running, and this is where backup and disaster recovery plays in, and this is how Unitrends can fit into your IT environment. Just a kind of example of hyperconvergence on a personal consumer level. Apple has been able to put 5 to 10 devices in one, whether it was your camera, your phone, your iPod, your pedometer, all into one device. This is kind of the trend, not only on a personal consumer basis, but with IT infrastructure as well. So in terms of storage and infrastructure, Nutanix has been an incredibly large player in this space. They've been growing at an incredibly fast clip, and their overall valuation shows that. So in terms of Unitrends, how we fit in with hyperconverged systems and where the value of adding Unitrends into a hyperconverged system is having one vendor for backup and disaster recovery means that there's no finger pointing, less management, you have more flexibility, and more confidence that you'll actually be able to recover in the event of a disaster. One support line, one throat to choke. So we kind of split this up into an old world and new world solution, where in the old world there's a lot of different vendors at every step of the way. There's just multiple levels of failure points beyond all those vendors, ultimately leads to a system that you don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in. And obviously these hyperconverged systems have been growing in IT environments compared to historical infrastructure. And the whole point of this is to reduce the complexity and put many your hypervisor, your storage, all of your virtualization together into one system. So it's a great goal, and on the high level, business leaders are working on moving towards that, but it adds complexity as well, because by creating all these changes in your environment too quickly, it can create kind of just complex and difficult management. Just a couple key players in the hyperconverged space at the moment. Obviously, Nutanix, Cisco, and EMC have introduced hyperconverged systems that are growing considerable in the market. So with the added complexity, there are more decisions on how you want to manage your backup and disaster recovery. There's more options on how you can do that. And within these hyperconverged systems, there are plenty of native tools that let you manage that yourself, whether that's VM-level snapshots, replicating data to a secondary site, or archiving. So the question remains, do you still need a backup solution? Do you still need a backup vendor? Many of the reasons you would need backup is simplifying all of these mixed environments. With Unitrends, you're able to back up standalone physical servers, VMware, Hyper-V, Xen, and many virtualized environments beyond that as well, all in one pane of glass, all through one combined user interface. This allows you to back up your data locally. You can have continuity into the cloud, whether it's the Unitrends cloud itself or hyperscale clouds like AWS and Azure. You can separate your backup data onto multiple media types, archiving to disk and tape, and manage it all through a center interface. So simplifying mixed environments is a difficult task to accomplish, and putting everything in one uniform application is very valuable. So having a robust local and cloud continuity solution where you're able to do physical to virtual recoveries, have granularity in terms of file level or application level backup and recovery. In terms of recovery assurance, Unitrends has built in DR testing built into the software where you can automate how often and what machines get tested, and ensure that they not only are able to stand up and they're able to recover within your RTO and RPO window. And we'll even use our physical appliance as an off-network sandbox to spin up those machines and then do off-network application testing. So in that way, you're able to really ensure that your disaster recovery plan will work as intended in the event of a natural disaster. So by having that backup data separation, you prevent broader storage failures to affect your recovery, and you're able to have your data at multiple recovery points and on different media files, and kind of really follow that 3-2-1 rule to ensure that you're able to recover. In terms of retention, a lot of businesses have long-term compliance requirements where they have to hold onto their data for a very extended period of time, whether it's 1, 2, or up to 7, 10, even infinite amount of time. With low-cost retention, low-cost archiving media, you're able to have long-term retention in a much cheaper manner. So you can write off to disk, tape, even a NAS device from the Unitrends solution to hold on to your data for long-term retention, and then immediately import that data back to the appliance and then do a full recovery on the file level, or if you wanted to do spin up a full machine as well, you have that ability. So just an example of how different businesses have included Unitrends in their backup solution in conjunction with hyperconverged systems. We have Nashville Wire. Is a company that makes different kinds of threaded wires and industrial wires. They have a mixed Nutanix and physical Windows solution or environment, and they have purchased 9 recovery series appliances throughout all of their remote offices and manage it through a central appliance user interface. So in this way, they're able to manage multiple sites of infrastructure and their physical servers and their hyperconverged infrastructure without actually having IT professionals constantly monitoring those sites at those sites. They have locations throughout the U.S. and also in Mexico as well. So just in terms of how Unitrends can fit into your environment with a Nutanix or other hyperconverged system, Unitrends ties directly into the hypervisor. So we can be deployed as a physical appliance that connects into the hypervisor, be it VMware, Hyper-V, or Zen, or Acropolis native support is coming out as well, and we're able to directly take snapshots of those virtual machines and back them up to the appliance. Another example, a real-life example, would be Sligro Food Groups, where they have many Nutanix nodes mixed with VMware, physical Windows machines, as well as Linux. The flexibility of the Unitrends solution really kind of is valuable here in the ability to have granularity and compliance and ultimately be able to hold on to that data for the amount of time you need to, as well as backing up specific applications and recovering application level data back to the original machine, as well as to other servers running those that SQL Server version or higher. Right. Another kind of way to explain how Unitrends can fit in is we also have a virtual appliance that gets deployed as a VM within your hypervisor virtual environment, and then we can back up all of your physical and virtual environments and then potentially replicate that up to the cloud. So again, that old world and new world methodology really kind of comes into play here, where having everything under one umbrella backup vendor is really valuable. In the case of a disaster, right, simplicity is incredibly valuable. Having one support line when something occurs to do recoveries of your data is just incredibly valuable, and having those automated testing as well gives you that peace of mind that you're actually able to do the recovery in a real disaster scenario. The last thing you want to do when there's a fire in your data center is try to figure out who to call. You want to have confidence in what you're doing in the solution. Again, the Unitrends cloud is our own proprietary cloud. We work with hyperscale clouds, but our cloud is purpose-built for backup and disaster recovery. We do not charge ingress-egress fees. We only charge you on the amount of data you are storing locally. So a 1 terabyte machine held in our cloud for 5-year retention, still we're only charging you for that 1 terabyte locally. This is a great feature in terms of having predictive cost. There's no cost for ingress-egress fees. There's no added cost for the amount of times you're replicating, the amount of times you're recovering, or even how many, so in terms of the data, the pricing, it's just based on your local footprint and the retention mode you want. Another thing, in addition with our cloud, is we have spin-up capabilities. We call it disaster recovery as a service. It's more of a full business continuity solution where you give our engineers a call, declare a disaster, and then you're able to have your entire environment mimicked and spun up on our cloud. You would work directly with an engineer to create a playbook, and then you and your end users could VPN into your environment hosted on our cloud. This is part of the testing, would be part of that, so you would know that things would be able to work the way you'd want to. Also, we would be able to do failback once you have your local environment back up and running. So this is a customer-obsessed model of business. We have 100% US-based support down in South Carolina. You're never alone when you're running a backup job. You're never alone if anything goes wrong in terms of recovery. At any part of the way, you can reach out to our support line. They open a support tunnel. They can VPN directly into your machine and check logs and troubleshoot what's going on. This is how we're able to achieve the 98% customer satisfaction rating that we have, and help make our customers feel confident in recovery in the event of a disaster. So again, here's our product line, how we can fit in your environment. We have the physical appliance, the virtual backup software appliance, as well as the cloud-based Office 365 backup, and Boomerang, which is a low-cost DR software that will take block-level data of VMware VMs up to S3 or blob storage in Azure and AWS, respectively, and then at the click of a button, it can spin it up into EC2. And with our software, the hardware and software are running the same Unitrends software. The hardware is purpose-built and has the software overlaid in. We do have a 30-day trial available of our software if you're interested in seeing how this can deploy within your environment. We can deploy to VMware, Hyper-V, and Zen at the moment. And so just quickly in terms of how we fit in, we back up over 200 operating systems, SQL Exchange, SharePoint, Oracle database applications, as well as NAS, NFS. And in terms of what operating systems we support, it goes back all the way to NT 3.1. Hopefully not all of you guys are still running NT, but if you are, we'll be able to back it up. If you want to check out that compatibility matrix, just give a Unitrends compatibility matrix a search on Google, and you can see the extensiveness of what we support in terms of backup and bare metal recovery. Not only do you back that up, but we'll do a backup copy, archive it to tape, disk, cloud, NAS, or SAN, as well as our own cloud and having our disaster recovery as a service option. And all of this will be continually tested as well with our recovery assurance model as well. And just in terms of how to ensure backup and continuity here, you're going to back up your data, obviously. You have to protect it. You have to secure it. You have to test it, which is hard to do in a manual format of all the IT professionals I talk to on a day-to-day basis. When it comes down to actually doing full tests of your backup and recovery plan, there's just not enough time in the day to just do a bare metal restore just kind of for the hell of it. So having that automated and built into the backup solution is incredibly valuable. As well as detection, our solution is constantly doing health checks of the systems we're backing up, whether it's measuring change rates or data entropy. We're constantly monitoring your systems, and if anything would be like indicative of ransomware, we would send you out an alert. As well as the recovery piece is a must, obviously, to get everything back up and running. Just in terms of our customer-based satisfaction, we have a lot of happy customers, a lot of businesses that currently use this that would be happy to act as a referral, like that customer I highlighted earlier, how they've been able to integrate Unitrends with a hyperconverged infrastructure to effectively manage their backup and disaster recovery solution. And of course, that all-in-one backup solution just allows no finger pointing, less work, and just a general secure and unified solution that helps you have peace of mind with your backup. And of course, you got to plug social media, so please check us out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube as well. Sorry so much for the audio issues earlier on, but I'm here to answer any questions you have about the solution, either over chat or over audio if there's time.
Yeah, excellent presentation, Max. Thank you so much. Again, apologies for all the audio hiccups at the start there. Great presentation, pulling us back into the event here. So we do have a lot of questions for you from the audience. I'm just going to kind of go down the list here. Bobby's asking, does the software support encryption at rest?
Yeah, absolutely. It's AES 256 encryption on the appliance.
Okay. Do you offer any VTL services, virtual tape library services?
We don't offer the tape library services ourselves, no, but we certainly can integrate in with tape with our physical appliances only, but yes.
Got it, got it. Do you support AIX and AS400 systems?
Yeah, so iSeries data, we do support it, and there are processes to back it up in terms of doing bare metal restores. Often you have to redeploy the OS and then do the file level backup on top of that, but absolutely, we're able to back that up, and you can confirm that on our compatibility matrix that I mentioned earlier.
Got it, got it. And then they're asking here, once the data is replicated up to your cloud, kind of what's the high availability level of that data? Or what do you all do to protect that data once it's in your cloud? Are there multiple data centers or?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So that's a great question. In terms of our cloud, it is geo-redundant. We do have data centers all over the world, but obviously we would keep everyone's data within the country of origin just for legal reasons. The data is all sent to the cloud in a WAN-optimized format, so everything is sent over the wire, deduped, compressed. So the backup copy data size is ultimately considerably smaller than the original data footprint. Something also to mention with that is that it's all managed directly through that local user interface, so you're able to do recoveries right out of that local appliance, whether it's file level or importing it back for a full recovery.
Okay, okay. What about PCI compliance?
That's a good question. I need to double check the compliance on that to give an educated response. I don't have anything offhand.
Okay, we'll get back to that one electronically. How do you license the software and the hardware appliances?
Absolutely. So our physical appliances are priced out based on storage because we're providing the hardware there, so it depends on your data set. It doesn't matter how many computers you're backing up for a physical appliance. It doesn't matter how many virtual hosts you have. It's just based on your data set. For our virtual appliance, however, that is priced out based on resource, not on storage, because you're going to be using your own hardware. So for a virtual appliance, it's licensed out for every standalone physical server. That's one license. And then for every CPU socket on your virtual host, that is a license as well. And you're just licensing, again, what you're protecting. There's no licensing for applications, for repositories, or anything like that. You just license what you're protecting, what you're backing up.
Got it, got it. And what about scalability? Like if you have a hardware appliance and do you run out of space on that one, and do you replace it if you need more capacity, or can you add a second one? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way the appliances are designed is to use all of the space it has available. So it's designed to fill up the space it has. At that point, once it's full, it'll start to purge the oldest backups kept on in a first in, first out retention mode. That's just by default. You can always go in and manually edit the retention modes for every machine on an individual level, or even the backup jobs themselves. You can create backup jobs based on retention and compliance as well. For the virtual appliance, you're always able to add storage in terms of virtual disks. The physical appliance, you can add another smaller appliance on top of it to handle the workload of the machines that no longer fit, as well as we are always doing promotions for trade-ins and able to get a credit with your current appliance for a new larger appliance if you'd like as well.
Very nice, very nice. I want to point out to the audience right now, there's a question on the screen. It says, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Unitrends Hyperconverged data protection solution? If you would, just check sure right there. And We've got another gift card that we've added to the pool here, so we'll be announcing that here in just a moment. But for the time being, we've got some more questions for you, Max. Another question here, they're asking about verifying my backups. Can Unitrends help with that to ensure that the data that's backed up is actually usable?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I was mentioning earlier when in terms of the recovery assurance, that automated testing. If it would make sense, I could bring up the user interface on the presentation just to explain what I mean by that. I don't know if there's enough time still to do that, but I just, that is an option, and you can automate the testing not only to ensure that they're recoverable, but you can do off-network application testing as well to ensure that they're actually able to run the services you need.
How can Unitrends help with ransomware?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways that Unitrends can help protect your environment from ransomware. Let's just first of all be clear, Unitrends is a backup company, so we're not a cybersecurity company. So we're not, you have to, obviously have your own, manage your firewall and manage your antivirus, manage your end users in terms of education and preventing ransomware from ever getting into the environment. However, unfortunately, there's no, front-end solution that's 100%, right? Mistakes happen, human error is possible. So the Unitrends solution is built on a hardened Linux OS. So by protecting your data in a separate operating system like Linux, that takes it away from the Windows operating systems that are typically targeted by ransomware. It's not to say Linux could never be affected by ransomware, but that's not generally what is the ransomware scripts are being written for. Also, as we're backing up your data, we're constantly doing monitoring of the data sets. So we do baseline change rates of those machines, if any, and create kind of standard baselines for every machine that we're backing up. If there is a spike in a change rate over on a certain machine, that'd be like indicative of ransomware, we would give you an alert. And as well as we measure data entropy as data gets backed up as well, data randomness, and as data is encrypted by ransomware, that is something that would increase the data entropy of that data set. So we would be able to monitor that, measure that, and then alert you to a ransomware infection, and then you can go and do a restore or shut that machine down and prevent it from encrypting any more of your files. And you would, of course, have backups from before the ransomware had infected the system.
Okay. And then what about protecting Office 365? Is that something that Unitrends can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have another, it's a cloud-based Office 365 solution that is all within the cloud, so there's no local hardware required, and it's infinite retention and indefinite, so it doesn't matter on the data size, it's just all on a user count license basis. And it's similar to the Unitrends, it's not directly taken from the Unitrends UI, but it is a great and simple to use product. Yeah, I'd be happy to give anyone personalized demos of that product as well if they call into our office. Cool.
And is there an evaluation of Unitrends?
Yeah, absolutely. On our website, we have a 30-day free trial of our Enterprise Plus level software, so our highest level software with all the functionality included. You can either trial it on your own, or if you actually have a backup and disaster recovery project that you're evaluating, we would advise that you call in, get an evaluation engineer like myself to walk you through the solution, work with best practices, and just kind of give step-by-step advice and information throughout the evaluation. But yes, of course, that we have a free trial available on our website, and you would be able to take a look. And when you're using the free trial, you will have access to our support as well. So you'd be able to open up a support tunnel and give those guys a call and have them give you any ad hoc help if you would need as well.
Okay. Excellent. Well, there's quite a few questions still for you there in the queue. I appreciate you getting back to those folks. Thanks so much. Great job on the presentation today, Max.
Yep. Thank you so much.
For more information on Unitrends, check out their website, unitrends.com, and the resources right there on your audience console. You can check that out as well. Now, I said I would announce another bonus $500 gift card winner to make it a total of 5 for the event. So that person who wins the first Amazon $500 gift card is Jamie Borst from California. Congratulations, Jamie, and best of luck to everyone else. And thanks for sticking with us. We've got another great presentation lined up for you right now. I'm proud to introduce Miriam Sanglaji. Forgive me if I mispronounce that. Miriam Sanglaji, who is the Principal Product Marketing Engineer at Nutanix. Miriam, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Thanks for being on. I can,
thank you for having me. Perfect. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar, and I hope that I can help you understand what Nutanix is about and what drives the hyperconvergence. I'm trying to get into a little bit more details around how Nutanix stack is built and how you can basically leverage from or benefit from that. So just to start, I know that this is on top in most of our customers' minds as well. So I want to start by basically taking you over why cloud has reset IT expectations. So in many ways, if you think about it, cloud, the public cloud specifically, has reset expectations for what enterprise IT must deliver. Internal IT consumers need infrastructure provision in minutes, like not in weeks or months. And if they don't provide that, the line of business will go directly to public cloud services. And then IT teams have to contend with shadow IT issues. And they want a solution that is simple to deploy, manage, and scale, like one-click operations for all common workloads. This is the experience of consumer IT. Like if you think about it, most of the operations on our phone are a single click and are usually intuitive. And this is what most of the IT wants for the infrastructure as well. The infrastructures that can be operated by IT generalists. And cloud has also set new business expectations, like organizations no longer tolerate like expensive costs of over-provisioned data centers. They want IT services only when they need them. They want to pay only when they use them, like fractional consumption model. And they expect continuous innovation, new features and capabilities rolled in frequently and non-disruptively, and obviously with no maintenance windows. And these customer requirements have set the bar for what data center and cloud architectures must deliver. So as you think about it, we don't have the one single cloud anymore. We have the public cloud, and this is customers' first experience with the cloud infrastructure. And we know majority of our customers are using public cloud today or have plans to do so. And there are obvious benefits to that: elasticity, flexible consumption model, and also simple. And it's an attractive infrastructure of choice for applications with unpredictable demand characteristics that make capacity planning very difficult. For these services, it makes sense to stand them up in the public cloud. And then we have this private cloud, they want the same cloud experience, but in their own data centers, because majority of applications in a typical data center, however, are more predictable. Like you know your resource requirements over time. For example, you can forecast with some confidence, and you want to deliver your mission-critical applications with high performance and obviously lower TCO. And then there is distributed cloud. This need to unify management of my IT environments and enable migration of application across environments is now extending to the distributed cloud. And when you think about it, should your cloud stop at your core data center? You still have apps running in your remote offices, isolated and disconnected environments, such as oil rigs, cruises, airplanes, and many more. And with the growing number of intelligent devices, there is an increasing need for intelligent edge server, edge cloud as well. And customers want the same cloud experience across their entire IT fabric, including remote branch offices, VR sites, the edge use cases like field deployments at their private and public cloud deployments. And customers are evolving into a multi-cloud environment. And that is why it is very challenging to provide a comprehensive, consistent experience across all these clouds. So when you think about it, often companies look at public or hybrid clouds to resolve their agility problems on-prem. This just adds another segmentation and expertise required to properly manage all these applications. And when you think about it, how many people really understand that end-to-end, from end-to-end, how an application works and what depends on what? And the ultimate goal in a multi-cloud environment is to provide, as I mentioned, a consistent experience. A consistent experience for the cloud operator as well as the consumer of IT services. There are, however, many challenges. With each environment built with different technology stack, it is difficult to migrate workloads between clouds. Lift and shift operations are time-consuming and expensive. Management becomes fragmented, and it's hard to reconcile very different consumption models. So when you think about it, achieving a consistent experience across all your clouds will be very, very hard. And this is why Nutanix is driving towards an enterprise cloud OS. So now I'm going to get into the technology stack to kind of describe how this enterprise cloud OS is built on. So Nutanix has built a cloud OS with a single cohesive stack that integrates all infrastructure resources with a scalable management plane for managing both infrastructure and applications. It's built on the most advanced and popular Hyperconverged foundation, combining scale-out storage services, server compute, and enterprise data protection. And what's unique to Nutanix is the power to use any common hypervisor of your choice, including ESXi, as well as building in a native virtualization layer, which is Nutanix AHV. So the core to the enterprise cloud is what is commonly called hyperconvergence. Instead of a standalone storage networking, server infrastructure, HCI converges all of them into a simple software-defined stack. The solution is built on a web-scale technology that powers some of the largest data centers and that our customers have. While HCI is a category that is fairly popular now, what truly differentiates like Nutanix is the fact that it's 100% distributed system with no single point of failure, with unlimited scalability and support for any use case. And when you think about it, deployments can start with a single node and can scale to hundreds of nodes seamlessly. Performance and capacity grow every time a node is added. And depending on the need, the nodes can be compute-heavy, storage-heavy, or a combination of both. And what this really means is that users add only the capacity that they want. And this is like a Lego-like model if you think about it. Infrastructure provisioning expansion becomes extremely simple. And finally, with VM-centric like data protection, applications are protected within the data center to a remote data center or in a public cloud. And then we have the core HCI solution that will work across major hypervisors like Hyper-V, VMware vSphere, Citrix Xen Server, enabling users to continue using the hypervisor of their choice. And when you think about it, that's actually a great power that Nutanix offers. You will not be locked into a rigid infrastructure. We'll give the freedom of choice for you to choose the hypervisor that you need. However, AHV is the next step after converging compute and storage for Nutanix. The hypervisor is not a consideration when you're choosing a public cloud, for example. Why should it be a consideration for on-prem? What is important is the ability to run applications at the needed performance, along with management, instrumentation, and automation. These are table stakes for public cloud, and Nutanix believes it is true for on-premises virtualization as well. Thus, we have included the Acropolis stack without any additional licensing. AHV provides all essential virtualization features and is tightly integrated with our Prism management to provide an enterprise-grade virtualization solution without requiring a suite of management and monitoring tools like traditional enterprise virtualization solutions. And then, if it's day one, if it's day zero, day one, or day n, we make one-click operations possible through Prism, and we do that based on our native integration of software with machine learning and AI technologies. So the push for improving efficiency and reducing TCO and assuring service quality has led a need for automation in data centers. And it's challenging to fulfill this with the explosion in the amount of machine data that needs to be analyzed to optimize data center operation. And by harnessing machine intelligence to mine through this data to make intelligent decisions, we can optimize the data center operation. And we have few features, like, for example, capacity planning and just-in-time forecasting are powered by machine intelligence engine, which we call XBIT. And they can help proactively monitor your infrastructure needs. These machine learning powered operation enable IT teams to stay ahead of the curve in terms of planning infrastructure so that business never runs out of capacity. And we know that's a huge advantage. And also, machine learning helps customers find what they're looking for in a simple, quick way so that they can get to the real job of troubleshooting and carrying out the operations that they want from their insights. So our Prism supports advanced options such as, for example, autocomplete, autocorrections, and also maintains a search history as well. It also lets customers take one-click actions on their search results. So then the next piece in the infrastructure stack is networking. As we have spoken before, the solution removes the need for standalone switches for storage networking, for example. No more fiber channel cabling and switches. It uses your existing on-top-of-rack switches for both storage transactions as well. The solution works with an industry standard 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit switches, but it doesn't really stop there. This solution includes one of the most common software-defined networking and security solutions that you need, like end-to-end network visibility, that you can have this option from our Prism, and you will be able to view connectivity of your virtual machines to the underlying network and the health of the connections as well. automation and orchestration through service insertion, chaining, as well as automatic configuration of network services based on changes in the app environment. Securing, for example, east and west traffic in networking through native microsegmentation solutions. These are all the technologies that we are building in Nutanix to make sure that we can have a comprehensive stack that addresses all customer needs. So then, with this solid foundation, we've made the infrastructure management one click, but in the end, that's not what drives business. Applications do. With the growing sprawl and complexity of operations, application-centric management is required. And by focusing on applications and by building on an invisible infrastructure, we can bring one-click philosophy to these drivers and turn complex operations. For example, database backup, maintenance stacks, upgrades, and so on. So when you think about it, in a multi-cloud, then there is a need for a multi-cloud management stack. As enterprises adopt hybrid and multi-cloud strategies, these automations need to follow. And by abstracting cloud elements from actual orchestration and policy required, we can ensure that no matter where an application needs to run, proper procedures are followed. New cloud can be tested and used without requiring new domain knowledge. Growing data center into any cloud. And Nutanix powerful cost analysis tool gives admins and users the knowledge they need to make an educated decision where to deploy, and the tools are required and the tools are required to change that choice. And when you look at it, this is a full stack solution. Essentially, forms are what we call enterprise cloud OS. And this system is pretty complex in a way. It's pretty complex. It has machine learning algorithms. It has AI, native AI integration. But from a consumer perspective, it is simple because we bring out the simplicity. We take care of all the complexity in the data centers. So when you take a look at Nutanix Architecture, Nutanix is deployed as a cluster of server or nodes, starting with at least 3. Each node has a CPU, memory, flash storage, and a hard disk drive, and has a hypervisor pre-installed if you want to use it. You can change the hypervisor if you want to all the most common hypervisors, for example, EXXi, Hyper-V, and the nodes are connected to each other with a 10 gig Ethernet switch. Any standard switch will do. Nutanix software runs in a user mode VM called the controller VM on each node in the cluster. And the controller VM or CVMs talk to each other and create a single storage pool using storage drives on all the nodes in the cluster. This is called Distributed Storage Fabric, or DSF. DSF distributes data and metadata across the nodes in the cluster and provides enterprise storage features such as deduplication, compression, cloning, tiering, and resiliency in a true distributed way with no single points of failure or limits. You get linear, predictable performance and capacity increases as the cluster grows. The Nutanix solution, what's different is we deliver data locality to provide the best VM and cluster performance. All I/O requests from a VM are handled by a local controller VM on that node. when a VM writes data, for example, one copy of the data is always written to the local node. That way, read requests can be handled immediately using data on the same node without going over the network. If the VM moves to a different node, for example, then over time, the data also migrates to the remote node to restore locality. And what is important is our solution is 100% software-defined and doesn't rely on custom hardware for any capabilities. And current, for example, Nutanix customers get benefits of software innovation by installing the latest software release with a single click. So now, looking at Nutanix, we deliver many different storage services to make sure we address all different types of applications. So we consolidate VM, file, block, and container storage on all on one platform. And we think this is powerful because you can address any storage, any type of storage needs on Nutanix. For example, network-attached storage appliances have been the solution of choice for file server deployments. These deployments can be complex to set up, operate, require special skills, and create an additional infrastructure silo. So with, for example, Nutanix file services, the customers can eliminate another infrastructure silo, which is NAS silo, and get similar infrastructure stack as a result. So AFS uses the same scale-out underlying platform and can be scaled out or scaled up very easily. And when you look at traditional SAN storage arrays and the way they have been designed, they struggle to meet the needs of today's cloud era. Their monolithic architecture quickly fall apart with the elasticity and the on-demand nature you would expect from a storage solution. They lack innovation as there is no holistic data center view and analytics are limited. Least of all, they don't have built-in automation to help with the day-to-day tasks. And to top it off, simple topology changes environment in a new approach must be taken. Cloud simplicity, scalability, and performance must be built into a service that enables existing bare metal and externally connected VM workloads to gain the benefits that the cloud offers. And this is where cloud infrastructure meets external workloads with our block services. And finally, modern containerized applications can get persistent storage on the Nutanix platform. And when you think about it, one of the common reasons why containers haven't got a widespread of adoption for traditional enterprise applications is because applications are stateful as opposed to stateless cloud-native applications. And with the support of persistent storage, the benefits of container technology now extend to enterprise apps as well. All this in addition to support for any virtualized application. So just to emphasize on, a lot of people have this mindset that Nutanix only works for branch offices, remote offices, VDI, but actually we have a lot of customers. Most of our customers are running mission-critical applications. And businesses that run these mission-critical applications use Nutanix solutions and use our storage services. For example, We have SQL servers running on Nutanix, Oracle, SAP, as well as many different use cases and applications running on Nutanix. And just to kind of give you an idea, like with the HCI deployment, you can start in portion of your data center and you can grow as you become more comfortable with the infrastructure. And that's the beauty of Nutanix, being able to scale out and have that ease of operation and management across all your environments. So just kind of revamping on these. So the whole HCI is the core of our technology, but it's what we believe that it should never stop there. We want to sell products and apps that we want to sell products that can be easily deployed. So that's why we have built many different modules or tools for you to take advantage to be able to try out a hyperconverged environment with no fees. Like for example, you can start evaluating Nutanix by using the Community Edition. And then you can test that environment with test tools that we provide, like for example, X-Ray. And then you can size your deployment easily too by our additional tools that we have, which is Sizer. And then with one-click operations, you can deploy it through a foundation. And then we know that migrating, like for example, if you decide to migrate from EXXi to AHV, we have the tools for you. So we are making your journey in Nutanix much easier. And obviously, once our Xi services are GA, you can extend that to Xi and use their services. And just to re-emphasize on that Nutanix is a solution that is all about choice. This hyperconvergence infrastructure and the software that we built on top of it enables you to have a choice. And that's very powerful, that you will not be locked in with one vendor. So you have a choice across the entire spectrum. You can choose different hypervisor, cloud provider, different type of supported platforms and hardware. And we make that experience easier for you. And that's all because of the infrastructure that's allowing us to do that. So I hope that was a quick summary on what hyperconvergence is and how we build our stack and what are the benefits on each side. I hope that was helpful to everyone. I think I'm done with the presentation and we can move on to Q&A.
Excellent. Great presentation. Thank you, Miriam. Yeah, we do have quite a few questions from the audience. While we do those, I'm going to pop up this poll question for everyone out there in the audience. If you'd like to be one of the first to learn more about the Nutanix solutions that Miriam just talked about, check the Sure box right there. So I'll just leave that on the screen. Miriam, let's see. One of the first questions that came in here is, well, let's see, container support. You talked about container support.
Yes.
I thought you covered that pretty well.
But I can talk through it a little bit more. Yeah, so with containers, we actually have a Docker volume plugin support. If you go on Nutanix website and you go into our platform services, storage services, there is a container storage. And you can go and we have we have a volume plugin on Docker. You can download that and start using that. And then we have also working on a Kubernetes, a persistent storage for Kubernetes that will be available soon as well. So we understand from many of our customers, they're trying out these new container technologies. And in order for them to stay on a single platform, we saw the need of supporting the stateful applications through persistent storage.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even know that you all had a Docker Volume plugin, so that's very interesting to know. And I didn't know about the Kubernetes either, so great points to bring up there. And that answers a question from Bobby, who was asking about all of those. Another one here is about. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Another one here is about what do you recommend for data protection when you have a AHV? Are there like a list of recommended data protection solutions for backup and recovery?
Yes. So we do have, because Nutanix also provides like many APIs, because we are essentially a cloud platform, and with these APIs that we offer, a lot of our ecosystem partners integrate within the APIs. So currently we have Haiku that has integrated with Nutanix, and that's a backup solution. You guys can go check it out. And also Commvault. And then there is a list also online that you can go find the partners of your choice, or also you can leverage. We have a DR story also that you can also look and see if that fits within your data center. So we have asynchronous, near synchronous, and also synchronized disaster recovery solutions as well.
Okay, excellent. And then you had a slide there that talked about the different Nutanix solutions, and this person is asking about some of those. So the slide was talking about one-click, where you said there were tools available for evaluating. So first,
yes.
the community edition, but this person is asking about X-Ray. Can you tell us what X-Ray is and what it does?
So X-Ray, essentially X-Ray is testing your environment. So at Nutanix, a lot of different industry vendors, they test, using a standard testing, but they don't actually test what happens when you're doing the upgrade, what happens to your environment, for example, as you're getting a snapshot. So you can think about X-Ray as a tool that you can insert different type of tests that are available. So it actually tests your your environment in a real working like situation versus situations that are fixed. So there are multiple tests within X-Ray that you can choose from, and then test basically your workload, your on the environment, and how it will be on Nutanix.
Oh, okay, cool. And then you've got other tools there, Sizer, Foundation, Extract, and how do you pronounce the Nutanix Cloud? XI?
Xi. So Nutanix Xi.
Okay.
So Foundation is basically, you can think about it as a tool that will install Nutanix platform. And it's a one-click operation, so you can deploy Nutanix software on the platform with Foundation. So we're just giving out that tool to make it easier for the customers. And obviously, we are all about simplicity. We want to make sure that throughout the process, from purchasing, deployment, and upgrades and all that, we have this simplicity and it's through one-click operations as well. And then Extract is a tool that we use, for example, to move, like, for example, if you're on AXXI and you want to move into Nutanix AHV, so we provide that tool, so that will take care of everything, so you don't have to do anything manually. And there are a bunch of other options, so if you're more interested, also go on our website and you can read up on them.
Okay, cool. Another question here is about what's the starting point or the entry point with Nutanix? Can you do like 2 nodes, or you do 3 nodes, or kind of how small can you get started?
So you can start with 1 node or 2 nodes. We just announced that not too long ago. But if you envision your data center that is going to be scale out, with 1 node and 2 nodes, you don't have the scale out options. But if you start with 3 nodes, then you can grow up. So minimum, I would say you start with 3 nodes, so you have the option to scaling out.
Got it. And then another question here is about what hardware do I use with Nutanix?
So you have multiple choices of our OEM partners. And again, also on our website, if you go to our products, there is a platform supported. So if you click on that, we have different type of OEM partners. We have Dell, XE, Lenovo, IBM as our partners that you can actually deploy Nutanix on. So there is a list of compatible hardware. Everything is stated there. So you can just go to Nutanix products and go to the platform supported, and you have all the information that you need.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot more questions for you there in the queue, but that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
For more information on Nutanix, of course, visit Nutanix.com. You can check out their free community edition as well, and also check out the resource there from Nutanix on your console. If you haven't answered that poll question, now's the time to do it. I'll just leave it up while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card winner. That gift card is going out to Brian Schwartz from Michigan. Congratulations, Brian. We've got 3 more gift cards to give away on the event today, so stay tuned for those drawings. All right, and now I'm excited to introduce Vaughn Stewart. He's the Vice President of Technology at Pure Storage. Take it away, Vaughn.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. My name is Vaughn Stewart. I'm with Pure Storage. And for the next 25 minutes, I'd like to share with you a perspective on how you may modernize your private cloud platform. In this conversation, I will be discussing FlashStack, that is the converged infrastructure offering from Pure Storage and Cisco. If you're not familiar with FlashStack, it's comprised of Cisco UCSB and or C servers, Nexus and MDS switches, and is powered by the Pure Storage Flash Array. Now, I do want to level set in this conversation. I will not be discussing the details of these individual hardware components, so we won't be talking about CPUs, memory, or performance statistics. Instead, we will be covering what those technologies provide when brought together and delivered as a converged private cloud. So FlashStack is pretty flexible. It supports a number of hypervisors, including VMware's vSphere, Microsoft's Hyper-V, and OpenStack, and also includes a large library of validated enterprise application designs. The goals of these designs is to help you eliminate or reduce the amount of time required to test and validate an architecture on the platform, providing you a blueprint that assures you achieve the greatest performance, availability, and a roadmap of how to scale as your business grows. So let's pivot a bit and start talking about modernizing your private cloud. You know, there's a lot of technologies that are in the market today that are giving way to conversations with customers about how do they upgrade their private cloud infrastructure? How do they pave a way for reducing operational costs, gaining more agility, and maybe expanding the service offerings, whether it's virtual machines to containers or virtualizing more business critical applications. So for this conversation, I'd like to look at 4 areas that I find customers are appreciative in terms of areas of conversation. And so first is about just modernizing your cloud, looking at the platform in general. And so in this time together, I'm going to discuss the values of disaggregated architecture and our evergreen storage model. From there, we're going to discuss how to eliminate hardware silos. You know, many of us are used to building platforms that are based on the costs and capabilities of hardware, and so we have a tier 1, a tier 2, and sometimes a tier 3 platform. I want to show you how modern technologies allow you to have one platform that can meet all of those needs. Then we're going to spend the bulk of our time looking at how to accelerate time to, and this is the reality of day-to-day operations and the decision factors that you need to consider when looking at modernizing your architecture for your private cloud. This is going to go beyond, I think, product offerings and claims, and actually look at the architectural capabilities, followed then by integrations within the hypervisor stack. And then last, I'm going to close with a brief segment on some of the technology that we shared at our last user conference, Pure Accelerate. We're going to talk about and revisit, if you haven't seen it, our desire to connect your private cloud to public clouds, natively in native formats and deliver something to market that I don't think exists currently. So with that, let's talk about modernizing your cloud. I got a lot of content here for this 25 minutes, so we're going to move along at a rapid pace. I want to discuss talking about the value of a disaggregated architecture. Disaggregated architecture means you've got independent compute and storage nodes. And the value of this architecture is that it reduces cost. It allows you to independently scale the requirements of your cloud based on your application needs. Depending on what you're running in your cloud, there's going to be a different demand for computational resources like CPU or memory or storage. And storage can be looked at in terms of capacity, throughput, or IOPS. And these attributes mix and match depending on the workloads. Disaggregated is the best model to fit the unique capabilities or requirements of your cloud. It allows you to adopt a best-in-breed technology and avoids hardware lock-in, which is something that we do see in some of the new alternative platforms like Hyperconverged, where all the nodes in a cluster may, depending on the technology, have to be identical. It also provides you a model that's actually lower in terms of the total cost, in terms of the number of compute nodes and the associated software licensing required for those compute nodes, because you're not spending CPU and memory cycles off on providing storage functionality. You know, the storage is a separate dedicated device and free from those costs and licensing. So disaggregated is a very flexible model. Now, for some of you, you may say, hey, wait a minute, I've got separate compute and storage, and I'm not a big fan of that today. We want to modernize. We don't want the same old technology. What I would share with you is that disaggregated is the model of the web and the massive or hyperscale web service providers. A couple common traits that are discussed when you're looking at vendors like Amazon or Microsoft, Facebook, and Google is notions of disaggregated architecture, all Ethernet-based fabrics, and no dedicated storage team, that there's a cloud platform team. And the cloud platform team manages the compute, the storage, and as well as the software that powers those platforms. Networking is still usually reserved to a dedicated networking team, but in terms of the core infrastructure, that's usually one team. I've shared with you some examples here on the right side of the screen if you want to go do some further research to make sure that I'm not giving you some vendor spin, but the bottom line here is if you're looking to modernize, maybe you want to follow those that are successfully delivering a platform at scale and look at what the cloud providers are doing with disaggregated architectures. Now, obviously, disaggregated architecture is simple to understand the value of being able to add any type of computational node when you need it, right? Add one that a model that matches what you currently have in place, add one that's more, beefier, mix and match, doesn't matter in the cloud. But sometimes scaling storage in the pure way may not be something you're familiar with. So let me take you through a basic example of how we scale the flash array inside of a flash stack. First, you have to understand that the flash array is a stateless architecture. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in scaling because in order for us to scale, we never take downtime, nor do we have any impact on performance. The stateless architecture means we reserve half the CPU and memory for running operations, meaning during maintenance windows, we don't lose anything. So you can start very small, and in this example here, I show us starting with an M20 and 5 terabytes raw, which gives you about 14 terabytes usable. In the real world, you can grow capacity by just adding data packs. Data packs are collections of flash modules that you add into the chassis and expand out into storage shelves. And that M20 can scale from 5 terabytes raw up to 227 terabytes of usable capacity non-disruptively. When you outgrow the performance of that chassis, and you need to move forward, you can leverage flex upgrades to just pay for the incremental difference between, say, an M20 and M50 and move up in terms of performance. And you can see here for this slide, we move up from 200 to 270,000, 32K IOPS. And you can follow that cycle of adding data packs and doing flex upgrades. And you can move up to a configuration like what I show here, which is 1.5 petabytes usable in 7 rack units with 370,000, 32K IOPS. That's a lot of storage power and capacity when you're looking at a disaggregated model and looking at putting storage, say, in top of rack type of configurations. As always, the flash array model is backed by Pure's Evergreen Storage as a subscription. This is a model where you are able to acquire the storage once And at the time of 3 years down the road, when you've got to look at a maintenance renewal, the rate's going to be flat. And when you extend your maintenance contract, we're going to go ahead and upgrade that controller for you. So you're going to receive a technology refresh at no cost. That's going to be paired in with a flat rate commitment to your maintenance, as well as all net new software features and functionality you receive during that lifetime of your support contract at no cost. So we've rolled out 25 new features or announced 25 new features, I should say, at our Accelerate conference. We're going to cover some of those here in a few moments, but as you can see, our goal with Evergreen is a subscription model where you only incrementally grow and the technology gets better, faster, and bigger over time. Now, I mentioned a few moments back that disaggregated leverages Ethernet storage. With FlashStack, Pure and Cisco don't care what your fabric is. Run Ethernet, run Fiber Channel, run both. The platform is flexible and works with both. There obviously is advantages to Ethernet in terms of if you have a greenfield, you're looking for simplicity, you want to have a solution that doesn't require hardware adapters, and so you want to do a software-based form of data connectivity. Ethernet is great. But Fiber Channel is the trusted fabric of the enterprise, and if you've got an investment in Fiber Channel, leverage that investment. What you need to know that if you look at FlashStack, you can move from one fabric to the other non-disruptively at any time down the road, and that is very attractive to a lot of customers. I want to move on to the second area, which is eliminating silos. I like to classify this as the FlashStack provides Tier 1 performance and availability at a Tier 2 price point. So let's look at that in a little depth. I think there's a couple of key elements that you have to look at within your storage platform to be able to make the claim that you can have one platform for all workloads. From the FlashStack perspective, what you are receiving at a high level is consistent sub-millisecond latency, which is a critical requirement for high-performance applications, such as like transactional databases, the end user experience with virtual desktops, etc. You're also receiving a default N+2 data protection that's going to ensure mission-critical applications, are protected, and is extended with things like our active cluster, which is a stretched cluster across a metropolitan area, right? The highest availability, giving you a 0 RTO. All the data is reduced, and Pure Storage provides the greatest set of data reduction capabilities in the industry, 2 to 3 times better than what you find with the storage array, 4 times more efficient than what you find with Hyperconverged. That means we make flash available for you at a price per virtual machine that's less than what you can have with like alternatives like hybrid hyperconverged storage. And bottom line, all data is encrypted. No need to go out and buy expensive self-encrypting drives or to have an additional CPU, memory, and performance impact by trying to do it in software. All of these features are by default. You can't change them. And so when we compare them to, say, alternatives like Hyperconverged, where you've got to build clusters based on the key criteria you're trying to accomplish. Look at high performance, it's going to net you higher cost. Look at low cost, you're going to come out with slower performance. Look at something for more availability, and again, the costs go back up. There's no need to build hardware silos for your cloud. One platform, put everything in it, meet the workloads of both the mission critical or business critical applications, as well as the cost that you're trying to accomplish with all your tier 2 virtualized applications. Now, we've had an analyst do some research in this spot, and so there's a great report that's off of purestorage.com that was put together by Howard Marks, and basically looking at the acquisition costs between a leading hyperconverged platform and FlashStack. And basically what you find is that you can't do an apples for apples comparison based on hardware. You've got to account for the overhead in CPU and memory for hyperconverged and the gains in data reduction that is provided by Pure when comparing hyperconverged to FlashStack. So when you normalize these two variables and you look at effective CPU and effective storage capacity, what you find is that FlashStack costs less than hyperconverged, and those savings increase as the size of your cluster grows. Now, the research here is fantastic. It's probably a little provocative, but there's some additional data points that aren't included, such as additional overheads of CPU and memory when you add things like replication to a hyperconverged stack, the impact of I/O latency on CPU and memory. We're doing some research in that space right now. And as well as what's the impact of a tech refresh? In other words, what's the value of evergreen storage at year 3 and down the road, right? Avoiding the rip and replace of your hardware. I know I mentioned for you that there's a significant difference in the data reductions between Pure Storage and alternatives. Look, every modern platform has some form of data reduction, but it's not the same. So what I've shared with you here is research looking at a prominent hyperconverged vendor going to their online sizing tool and picking the best data reduction value that they offer, which is 2 to 1. And what you can see here is that 192 terabytes of capacity, that includes the cache capacity and the persistent tier, nets out at 196 terabytes of usable storage. By contrast, when you look at Pure Storage, and we apply a very conservative 4 to 1 data reduction for private cloud, that's below our global average of 5.1 or greater than 5.1. And I add to that a capability that's now enabled in vSphere, that's been in Hyper-V and OpenStack for a little while, but does not exist in Hyperconverged, which is VM file system unmap. You can see that 58 terabytes of raw capacity can actually translate into 225 terabytes of effective usable capacity. That helps power a lot of what I shared with you in the previous slides. It's a fundamental component of storage. Now, for some of you, you may say VM file system unmap. I haven't heard of this. I'm familiar with unmap. It kind of sometimes works, doesn't work in VMware. It's been a kind of a long journey. What I'll share with you is that VMware has finally dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and now actually brought a capability with thin provision virtual disks that not only do they grow on demand, which is what we're all used to, they also now shrink on demand. Most customers and technologists are unaware that roughly half the data in your virtual footprint is data that's trapped inside of virtual disks. The operating system has deleted it, but it still sits in the operating system file system. There is no mechanism for actually purging it from the virtual disk file. That's what this technology provides for you here. You can see an example here on the screen where a customer enabled this, and over the course of 3 days, 40% of their raw storage capacity was eliminated. All right, so checking in on how we're doing time-wise here, I need to make sure that I keep a crisp pace. I want to focus on accelerating time too, and this is where I think the rubber meets the road with technologies and the architectures. This is about simplicity, and so I'm going to focus on a notion that I call no trade-off architectures and how they ensure success. Right? When we look at private clouds and we look at the teams that are supporting them today, right? You've got a combination of the compute and virtualization software team, paired up with the storage team, teams with 2 different paradigms in terms of experience, the technologies that they focus on, all the idiosyncrasies that they have to work around. And as we look into unify these teams through technologies, I want to share that you've got to watch out for storage trade-offs. The reason why companies have separate storage teams is that they're littered with trade-offs that are going to impact cost, performance, and availability. And so as we look at converging, whether it's a converged infrastructure or a hyper-converged platform, converging storage operations to a single team, you got to make sure that you are aware of what these trade-offs are. And what I'm sharing with you on the screen here are common array trade-offs and common hyper-converged trade-offs. So I like to position the fact that the flash array is a no trade-off architecture. It delivers unparalleled simplicity, which directly translates into unparalleled or unmatched success. There is nothing you can tune. Features like the data protection, data encryption, data reduction, and quality of service are automatic. That means you'd get all of that along with sub-millisecond latency in terms of performance. You also receive 100% performance through failure and maintenance. You adopt a cloud-based management portfolio, meaning there's no software to download and deploy or maintain, right? It's 100% managed inside of vSphere if that's your hypervisor platform of choice. And as well as even the software updates are delivered through the cloud. So there's no maintenance windows for your team. You schedule when the cloud updates are going to come to the array. It gets updated, and your infrastructure doesn't even notice that anything occurred. The flash array also has a track record of more than 2 years of delivering greater than 6 nines availability. This is availability through planned and unplanned downtime. It leads the industry in terms of uptime and is really a game changer in terms of how do you want to look at your infrastructure. Storage is a foundation, and so not only just having greater than 6 nines availability, but no performance loss through failures has a direct correlation and impact on your service levels, your commitment to your end users and your lines of business, that your private cloud platform will meet or exceed their requirements. Now, I do want to come back to, looking at a contrarian view, saying, you know what, I'm very interested in combining compute and storage into the same chassis. And, there's some benefits here, right? Things like, I can deploy in minutes because everything's booting off of local storage. This is an ideal from a cost perspective, maybe for a real small branch office where I only need like 3 nodes and I only need 3 nodes for HA. But there is a disadvantage, and this is what I want to highlight here when we're comparing architectures. There's an architectural trade-off that impacts cost, availability, and performance when I combine compute and storage together. And I want to pause here. This isn't something that I'm saying. This is something that vendors like, for example, VMware share in their documentation. They show as you turn up data services, your trade-offs are going to be in the areas of performance and costs. So, you've got to pick and choose, or AKA build a silo depending on the criteria you want. But there's also a secondary issue that I would highlight, which is when you converge compute and storage together, you are losing discrete failure domains. In other words, a server that fails or is even down for maintenance is also a simultaneous storage failure. And you've got to decide, what's the right type of data protection to protect against that failure? What's the cost of it, both in terms of dollars, but also performance? So what we see in POCs where customers put actual, decent workloads on these platforms, run CPU utilization to above 50%, is inconsistent VM performance during, workload rebalancing like vMotion and storage vMotion, server failures, and software updates. And so, I can elaborate on this, but for sake of time, I'm going to move forward and really try to put a positive notion, which is simplicity ensures success. So as you're going to transform your cloud operational team, adopt a cloud paradigm. Look at, again, what the cloud providers are doing with disaggregated. Look at Ethernet fabric if you're looking for a simpler, lower cost fabric. And when you look at your operational team, focus on the strengths that are least known to the team, right? The areas of knowledge that the team doesn't have. I assure you it's going to be in the areas of storage. And if that's the case, then look at a platform that's going to eliminate a lot of the storage pitfalls for you. It'll drive greater success. I want to shift here a bit and in rapid fire kind of cover some of our core VMware integrations. Now, while FlashSec supports multiple hypervisors, VMware is obviously the lion's share and leader in the hypervisor space, and so I'm going to focus just on those enablements at this time. First off, this is the wizard that you see inside of vSphere when you're provisioning storage to a flash array. You notice it's super simple. I give a name, a capacity, and I pick a protection policy. A protection policy is a definition around a snapshot schedule, a replication, and a retention policy. Basically, in 3 clicks, you get optimized storage. Storage provision to all the nodes, all the multipathing is set and optimized for both high availability and performance, and you get all the value that we've shared earlier in the flash array. This means that you can now provision storage, and you can just look at software as services, right? Services of snapshot recovery, limiting QoS, right? These are all just defined in software, but the base platform is just set up for optimal use. We've also introduced support for vVols. What you need to know is that this is the new storage platform for VMware. It provides higher performing and simpler storage. There's no more data stores to manage, and that's a layer of abstraction between the storage layer and the virtual machines. Now VMs receive volumes just like physical servers. It provides a form of automatically assigning storage to VMs and allows you to now extend what services you want to provide that are defined in software to the VM through VMware's storage policy-based management. This is a real powerful construct because it also opens up the data inside of vVols to be able to be more flexible, be able to connect now a volume to a virtual machine, disconnect it, connect it to a bare metal server, disconnect it, and now connect it to a cloud, a public cloud service provider. So a lot of flexibilities there. I shared with you earlier that we've got automatic QoS. I want to elaborate on that just briefly, which is every flash array is designed so that you can leverage all of the performance in the flash array. We don't want you trying to figure out service levels manually. And should the flash array run out of performance, automatic QoS comes in here and will start to squash or inject latency into the bursty or noisy neighbor application. This means all applications receive the sub-millisecond latency, the high quality of service that they're required, and the application that's pushing the hardware beyond its limits, we're going to go ahead and manage that automatically for you, right? This is a native adaptability of your cloud platform, something that I think shows a lot of value. And the levels that we do this with dealing with sub-millisecond latencies or single-digit latencies, these operate at a level that of finer granularity than what you find in things like DRS inside of the hypervisor. Now, later on this year, through the Purity 5.0 operating system, we will be introducing policy-based QoS. These are limits, right? This is an enhanced offering that's going to plug into VMware Storage Policy-Based Management, allowing you to define either priorities of service or performance limits that you can then, on a per VM basis, just assign and change at any time without having to move the data. This is a critical component for service providers and those who like to have chargeback models. It's also a way that you can ensure that your most critical applications never get starved off, even if they become the noisy neighbor. We'll also introduce in first quarter, or plan for first quarter of 2018, rolling out VM visibility inside of our Pure One cloud management platform. This is going to support providing you VM statistics for VMs both on VMFS and in vVols. It's going to give you a virtual to physical infrastructure topology map, and it's going to give you actionable insights around items like performance or capacity when certain thresholds or triggers are met. I shared with you briefly that we've rolled out with Purity 5.0 Active Cluster. This is a way to stretch your cluster in an active-active format across the metropolitan area. The requirements here are 5 millisecond total round-trip latency. But what this gives you now is a stretched cluster that's active-active on both sides. It allows you to either have the entire storage device be stretched or just volumes. So you could do this on a per data store, on a per vVol basis. Stretch these devices so that you've got a zero RTO. Best part about Active Cluster, just like we said in Evergreen, it costs you nothing. It is a net new capability that customers can roll out, and they can mix and match the arrays if they're going to do per volume based replication, not an entire array to array. So it's got a lot of flexibility, software provided, and the best part, 4 steps to set up, 1 net new command, uber simple. We provide a large vRealize automation catalog for those who are looking at infrastructure blueprints and trying to automate, the profiles they put on their servers as they add them to the flash stack and they scale out their cluster. We've also introduced, in a joint partnership with Microsoft, native Windows file services for those customers that are looking to have a standalone cloud somewhere and they need to provide storage for their end users, for their VDI, things of that nature. The nice part about this partnership with Microsoft is we have no feature gap in our NAS offering with the Windows infrastructure. Last but not least, I want to touch base on simplified system updates. If you didn't catch me earlier, in the flash stack, there is no one button for upgrade. And a lot of folks think that there's some value to that. Hopefully I've shared with you when I talked about some of the trade-offs in converging compute and storage, you understand that you've got to plan for that appropriately. What's nice in Flash Stack is that the flash array is just updated from the cloud. All your team has to do is schedule the time and grant access for the remote session to begin. The flash arrays will be updated. They'll do so non-disruptively. They'll do preemptive checks to make sure that there's no negative impact, that there's no single pathing of any device or anything like that in the infrastructure, and there will be no loss of performance as you go through this. On the server side, there's been some great advances from Cisco in terms of simplifying the updates through UCS Manager and UCS Central. And of course, the hypervisor updates are executed in coordination with VMware's Update Manager. Last but not least, and I'm really cutting down my time here, is enabling multi-cloud. Our key focus here is we want to extend what you're doing in the private cloud natively into the public cloud, not asking you to put the same software that's in your private cloud up into the public cloud and having to do that cost. We want to do it natively. And so what you'll see rolling out through Pure Storage through 2018 is our Snap and our Cloud Snap products. Snap's coming in first half. Cloud Snap is focused for second half. And what Snap in Cloud Snap will allow you to do is to take the snapshots in the flash array and not only move them to another flash array, but move them to a flash blade, also move them to any NFS server. Could be NetApp, could be via EMC. It could also just be a Red Hat cluster, if you will. That gives customers a lot of flexibility in terms of where do they want to make copies of the data, where do they want to archive it, and it gets really sexy as we go into Cloud Snap, which is going to build off of Snap and Snap to NFS and allow you to then actually move snapshots into public clouds. And we're going to start with doing this with AWS. You will be registering your S3 keys inside of the flash array, and we're going to then move the snapshots in S3. They can archive off into Glacier to give you more cost-effective storage in the cloud. And once they're in the cloud, it's going to allow you to be able to take those data sets and natively clone them into AWS EC2 instances, which you could use for test and development. You could use for a form of DR. You could use it for cloud bursting if your base images are replicating up there, right? We've cracked the proprietary code wrapped around the on-prem private cloud software and allowing you to now leverage that in Amazon. Of course, we've got a robust backup partner ecosystem that's going to be leveraging these APIs and expanding their current capabilities that are in the products today. And so as we go through 2018, watch out for Snap and Cloud Snap, and watch how we evolve that both of those capabilities in 2018 and beyond. So I've come to the end of my time. What I've shared with you is an introduction to FlashStack, our converged infrastructure offering from Cisco and Pure Storage. I've touched base on the value of modernizing your cloud with a disaggregated architecture, how it gives you more flexibility and reduces cost. I've talked about how the technology allows you to eliminate silos, that a FlashStack can meet both your needs for your mission critical applications in terms of performance and availability, as well as the price points for your tier 2 workloads. I focused a lot on accelerating time too, and that was more about looking at technologies not based for what the products are, but for what the product capabilities are, focusing on the areas of complexity and trade-off, and evaluating your products or the products that you're considering to make sure that they allow your team to not be an expert and have success. Last, I focused on how we at Pure Storage are looking to take our technologies and extend what your private cloud capabilities are into driving that into a native functionality in the public cloud. A lot of excitement going on there. And so hopefully you'll be able to watch us evolve the product through 2018. So with that, this has been Vaughn Stewart. I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed the discussion on modernizing your cloud. And if we've got any time left in this webinar, let's see if we can take some Q&A.
All right, great presentation there from Vaughn Stewart. I'm going to go ahead and pop up this poll question. And we do have experts from Pure Storage standing by to answer some questions for us. The poll question that's on the screen is, would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Pure Storage Converged solution? So I'll just leave that up while we do Q&A. If you would like to be one of the first, click sure. And let's see, do we have Julie and Colin?
Colin's on?
Yes, we're here.
Hi, Julie and Colin. Thanks for joining us for Q&A. So we've got some questions here about the Pure Storage FlashStack. The first one that came in is, with FlashStack being a converged solution between Pure and Cisco, can you tell us who do you buy it from and who supports it once you have it?
You buy it from a Pure certified partner, but it is supported by Cisco. Your local partner will assemble it and deliver it to you, but it's supported by through Cisco support, providing obviously warm call transfer, hot call transfer to Pure for the storage portion of it.
Okay, cool. And then once you have it, what's the centralized management platform for FlashStack?
It's managed through, as Vaughn mentioned, the vSphere plugins or Cisco UCS Director. We've got some great demos we can show you on our website for managing it through setting up through UCS Director as well, in addition to what Vaughn showed you in the demo.
Okay, and then there's a question here about, does it run physical servers, virtual servers, or can you do a combination of both?
You can do a combination of both.
Okay, and then what about hypervisor support?
Primarily VMware based. We support VMware as the primary hypervisor in addition to bare metal.
Okay, and then what's the entry point for FlashStack? Like, where does it start and how big does it scale up to?
Well, you can start with what we call the FlashStack Mini. Very small reference architecture, for just a few, hundreds of VMs, and then you can scale all the way up to thousands of VM solutions, depending on the underlying storage and UCS Director components you configure with it.
Okay, and there's a question here, Bobby. He's asking, with FlashStack, would this be good for optimizing large volumes of telemetry data from IoT sensor arrays, or is there a different Pure Storage solution for that?
Yeah, we have FlashStack is built on top of our Flash Array product, which is primarily designed for block storage and supporting workloads that run on top of block storage. We have a Flash Array product that's designed for big data and big data analytics. It's probably a better fit for your use case, Bobby.
Okay. And it looks like that's all the questions we have. There's a couple good comments here. One says, Vaughn Stewart is a very good speaker. And another one says, this is awesome. I can see using this at one of the companies I work for in the next 12 months. So some good feedback on the FlashStack solution. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Colin, for joining us.
Thank you, and I'll continue to take questions in the chat if people post them. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So if you have more questions about FlashStack or any of the Pure Storage solutions, just post those in the Q&A, and we have Colin and Julie standing by to answer those. If you like to be one of the first to learn more about Pure Storage, the poll question's on the screen, and I'm going to leave it up there while I announce our next prize winner. And that Amazon $500 gift card is going out to Roland Ellison from Tennessee. Congratulations, Roland. We've got 2 more gift cards to give away. And with that, I'm excited to introduce Isaac Cobb, who is a senior solutions engineer at Maxta. Isaac, are you with us?
I am.
Thanks for being here, Isaac. Take it away. Tell us about Maxta Hyperconvergence.
Awesome. Thank you. So hello, everyone. My name is Isaac Cobb, Senior Solutions Engineer for Maxta, which is a software-based hyperconvergence platform. I'm going to go through a good bit of information today, but welcome any and all questions. A little bit about me. I've been in the industry a little over 20 years, sold a lot of different platforms. And as we go through, I think you'll see a lot of the compelling nature of why I chose Maxta, especially within the hyperconvergence space. So with that, let us continue on. And a bit about hyperconvergence and how Maxta goes about it. So first off, we are software-based, meaning we're not tied to any brand or specific type of hardware, which makes us very elastic and allows you to be very adaptive in terms of what hardware platforms and server platforms you choose to have in your data centers, right? So we're not concerned about what sticker is on the box. It can be very vendor independent. You can even mix and match server platforms. So if there's a change within the business that determines we need to move from where we've been at today and we want to go with this other direction tomorrow, you have that choice. You have that capability with Maxta since we are software only. We do support multiple hypervisors. Today we support VMware as well as KVM. We have OpenStack and a few others on our roadmap, so we are going to be adding into that portfolio, but as it stands today, those are the 2 platforms that we are fully integrated with, full RESTful API stack, the whole 9 yards. Now, since we are just software, we are also perpetually licensed, meaning once you adopt the software, once you buy the software, you have a maintenance component, but you're able to move that license regardless of, the servers that you have today and moving forward. So if you buy server XYZ today, and then let's say 5 or 6 years down the road, it's time to refresh that hardware architecture, you refresh that, you don't have to rebuy the Maxta license, right? You just continue paying maintenance in whatever flavor you choose to have in your organization, and that is that's the perpetuality of that license. So again, very elastic, very adaptive. You're able to take your environment in the direction that you need to go. And there's a few other things I'm going to touch on our time here, but that's really the main overview around what Maxta is doing and why. A little bit about who uses Maxta. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but there's a few on here that we like to call out. Obviously, you'll see Lenovo. They are actually a user of Maxta. Throughout APJ, they run their entire Microsoft stack on Maxta, so that's all of their SharePoint, all of their Exchange, all of their SQL. If it's a Microsoft application, it is running on a big single Maxta cluster. They're able to do that through our application-defined parameters, which again is something I'm going to get into here in just a second. Another kind of key call out, very recently, we want to deal with the U.S. Air Force. They tested everybody, pretty much every HCI platform that is available, and we won out due to not only just cost and TCO, also resiliency, performance, and various other factors. It was a very rigorous test, and they end up choosing Maxta when it was all said and done. Again, I could go through quite a bit of these, but you're kind of seeing a direction. Our platform truly does fit small to big, right? There's really not an environment that's too small, but by that same token, there's rarely an environment that's too big due to the adaptiveness of our platform. Now, why hyperconvergent software? So I know everybody's been on here for a few hours, but in the past and still what's going on today, you have your, I guess we'd call them almost traditional now, traditional storage arrays, which, again, complexity is a varying point, cost is a varying point. But if you look at why HCI really came about, you know, in that kind of 2009, 2010 timeframe, it was really to drive down, you know, make it easier to manage, easier to grow, easier to scale, to save a lot on the ongoing cost. And then if you kind of fast forward a little bit and you get into the, you know, around 2012, 2013, when truly the software-defined data center stack, or, you know, that kind of terminology really started coming about. And that took that a step further and started making where you could use commodity hardware, right? You're taking away the specialization at the hardware layer, which does an even further realm of reducing cost, reducing complexity, reducing, you know, what it takes in the event of whether it's a failure or whether it's an expansion or whatever the case may be. That's really where, you know, kind of the trifecta of this is really kind of coming together, where you have the benefits of HCI originally around the software itself, and then you take a software-defined approach where you break off of the appliances, you move away from, you know, kind of the vendor and the design lock-in of what most appliances bring to the table, and you get an additional layer of savings and reduction in complexity. You know, and that's really where Maxta sets itself apart. There's a few slides. We are actually an Intel-backed company. I'll get more into that here shortly, but Intel actually, when they tested everybody, it was a little over a year ago, and decided to invest in Maxta, was they looked at us as Hyperconvergence 2.0, right? It was taking all the, you know, the best of breed and the best approaches of hyperconvergence, but also bringing that beyond the appliance and looking at a software-defined approach where you're able to take best of breed hyperconvergent software, best of breed, whether it's backup and business continuity, just best of breed across the board, and create your own software-defined stack that truly enables your organization to thrive and grow, and not be burdened with consistent kind of cost and overhead and, you know, the cyclical replacement schedules that sadly the vast majority of us have become all too accustomed with, right? And that's really where that software-defined approach comes in, and why Maxta has truly adopted that approach. Now, this slide I like to spend some time on. So, mentioned earlier where, you know, if you kind of take a look at this, the running mixed workloads, that's where, and if you kind of take a look at what's up here, you know, we've got SQL, Exchange, Citrix, you know, VDI through Horizon and Zen Desktop. You know, and there's obviously quite a bit more, you know, workloads that are out there, but that's the key thing here is that each one of those to run as good as it can run requires some very defined parameters, whether it's, you know, block size and, you know, probably want to have different replica factors determining whether it's mission critical or whether it's not, you know, and that's really where, when you look at all the HCI platforms as a whole, the settings around a lot of that, your replica factor, your page size or your block size, your compression algorithms, all those kinds of things, you're running it on a per cluster basis. This is one of the, I have the conversation every day. This is why, one of the cases is VDI adoption isn't where most organizations want it to be, because a lot of them can't afford to invest in a disparate, silo of technology dedicated to, whether it's Horizon or Desktop or whatever platform you want to use, right? This is why, I've got a lot of organizations that are running Exchange specifically on its own Exchange environment because of how different it is than, say, all the database applications and various other items that they're running. What Maxta does is we take all of the same settings, page size and replica factor and all those same settings, but you're able to define that on a per VM basis instead of a per cluster basis. So that enables organizations to do, give Exchange 32K block size, give it, LZ4 or whatever compression algorithm you want to give it replica factor 3, because obviously it's going to be mission critical, so you want to have as many copies out there as you can from a resiliency factor. Then on SQL, give it replica factor 3, but you don't want to give SQL a 32K block size. You're going to take a big performance hit when you do that. So you can give it 8K. That's what SQL and most database applications are really going to thrive at. You can give it a different compression algorithm. Maybe you give that one of the gzip options, a little more performance oriented, but quite a bit more aggressive in terms of the compression algorithm. And again, you have these options on a per VM basis. But by that same token, let's say you want to run VDI in that same environment. You can give VDI a 4K page size or block size. That's what it will really thrive at. But you don't want to give it RF3. Why take that storage penalty for something that, is basically booted off of a gold image and you can just reboot it if something has a problem, right? So give it RF2. No reason to take the storage overhead. Keep it on LZ4 compression algorithm. It works fine, and it's VDI, so it's going to compress down quite well anyway. So that's really what enables Maxta. That granularity of doing all of these settings per VM allows you to, you can run all these disparate workloads with no performance penalties and no storage penalties. If you're running 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 VMs or however big your environment is, more often than not, 15 to maybe 20% truly need RF3, right? You need replica factor 3 because they're mission critical. The rest, if they don't need to have that, that third copy of the data, right, somewhere in the environment from a redundancy and a resiliency standpoint, then you can give all of that RF2. So you don't need to take that, 20 or 30% storage penalty on everything just to cater to the mission critical workloads, right? You're really able to fine tune what your environment looks like. Now going back, we are, full RESTful API, full integration with all of the VMware and the KVM management and automation tools. So you can even create storage templates based on, so like if you go into vCenter and you need to create, 30 or 40 VMs at a time, you can create a storage template and assign that storage template to all of those VMs in one motion, right? You don't have to go VM to VM. You can, but you don't have to. So again, fully integrated, ready to go. Multiple hypervisors. I know I've touched on that a few times. We have OpenStack coming, as well as a couple of others that engineering is working diligently on. And then choice of servers. I know I kind of touched on it earlier, but truly, Intel to Supermicro, UCS, Dell, Lenovo, HP, again, pick your poison, right? Whatever serves the organization the best, you're able to make that decision to be successful long term, right? And then you can even change your mind down the road. So, what I like to say is as long as the hypervisor of choice is happy with the hardware that's underneath it, so meaning, all the firmware is good, it can see all the hardware underneath, everything's ready to go, then Maxta can hyperconverge it. obviously we've got some, there's some best practices around sizing. We have a hardware compatibility list around, cache drives and things like that. But for all intents and purposes, you can run us on a, if you're Dell today and you have 6 or 8 hosts and you decide, you know what, we want to make a move to UCS or we want to make a move to Intel within that same cluster, you have that capability with Maxta. Then you also have, and I'll touch on that here in just a second, but you also have the ability to grow compute and storage independently. So you have the capability of, let's say you have 5 server hosts today that's running all of your workloads, right? And storage is good, storage performance is good, you got plenty of I/O, but let's say you're running short on, RAM or compute power, something along those lines. Now, if it's RAM and you want to upgrade RAM on the fly, you can obviously do that. There's a typical maintenance window, just like adding RAM to any regular server. You can use whatever brand is supported by your hardware manufacturer. You can use that, right? Maxta makes no determination of how big or, there's no core count limitations. There's no RAM limitations with our software. There's no, again, there's storage best practices, but there's no storage limitations. But let's say you needed, VDI is very common with this. You're going to run out of core count or RAM before you run out of anything else. So you're able to take, let's say you got 5 servers today, you could buy a 6th server, put your hypervisor on it, VMware KVM, put Maxta on it, but don't put any hard drives in. Okay? So once VMware, let's say you're using VMware, once VMware and Maxta is on that server, your resource utilization for VMware can use all of the compute and RAM and all the resources that are in that server. Obviously, there's no drives in it, so it's not contributing to the Maxta global namespace. But then let's fast forward, let's say 6 months, maybe a year down the road, a new application needs to come online, or one of the organizations within, or one of the departments within the organization says, we want to have this application. We want to use this. Let's say it's going to add 10 terabytes of space, right? Well, if you need more drives, you have a server with open drive bays. You can just add hard drives to that server. Doesn't have to match all the other servers, right? It doesn't have to, let's say when you started, you bought, 960 gig SSD cache drives and 2 terabyte spinning disk. 3 or 4 years down the road, you buy that server, with just compute and RAM continuing on. And a year down the road after that, you're probably not going to be able to find 2 terabyte spinning disk and 960 gig solid state drives. So maybe you put 1.92 or 3.84 drives for caching, and then maybe the smallest available spinning disk at that point is a 3 terabyte or maybe a 4 terabyte drive. You can put that in that 6th node. Maxta will take care of all the resiliency and make sure that everything is all the data locality is where it needs to be to keep everything redundant and resilient, right? So it doesn't overload any single server node within a cluster. So, that is really, really key to a lot of organizations around, I am sitting here today, organization makes change X. I shouldn't have to go out and spend, buy, a big appliance that has drives and RAM, and it matches what else is there if I'm only looking for one piece or one part of it, right? You need to, breaking that cycle is key to long-term success within any, hyperconvergence or really any data center environment. Now, secondary to that, let's say you have 5 servers, and you've got some open drive bays. Well, you can also just add, even if it's 1 drive at a time, you can add a drive to server 1, and then a month later you can add a drive to server 2, or however you want to do that. I think another really key thing is Maxta is the only platform where you can also grow beyond in a hybrid environment. We support hybrid and full flash. In a hybrid environment, we're the only hyperconvergence platform where you can grow beyond the 2 cache drive limitation. The reason we do that is that in a hybrid environment, all rights go to the fastest drives, whether that's solid state or NVMe. We already support Optane thanks to the Intel relationship, and we're working on 3D XPoint as well. But the fastest drives in the box are going to be your cache drives. So let's say you start out with 960 gig cache drives today, and on those, 300 gig is for read cache. There's a read cache partition that's on that drive. So basically, when all writes come in, they're written to those fast drives. If the access of that block is over and above what the I/O of that hybrid server can deliver, right? So if you're going from solid state down to, say, 2 terabyte spinning disk, very common. But if the access of that block is above what the I/O of the rest of the system can deliver, it'll sit in that read cache location on that solid state drive, right, until it falls below that threshold, and then it moves down. Well, as everybody can probably realize, some people need more than 300 gigs per host of read cache. So you can do 3 drives, you could do 4 drives. We've got customers with configurations all the way up to 6 in production, because every one of those drives gives 300 gig. So based on their workload parameters, based on, there's a lot of research and a lot of time that's spent into that, and we can obviously help with that scenario. But it was determined that instead of doing just 2 drives on about 30 hosts, they could fit everything into right about 10 or 11 hosts by just expanding their solid state drives, which obviously saves money in licensing, saves money in a lot of areas, and Maxta enables that kind of capability. And you can also grow into that. So if you have open drive bays, you can expand into that on the fly. You don't have to configure that out of the gate. Another really kind of key component at the hardware level is, let's say your the drive bays are full, right? And you have those 960 gig solid state drives. You can actually, while in production, replace those. Let's say you wanted to go, after a couple of years, you need just more write landing space, right? The 960 gigs aren't cutting it anymore. You can upgrade to, let's say you upgrade to 1.92, or, if the hardware vendor supports it, maybe you want to move from SSD to NVMe. You can make that transition on the fly with just the cost of whatever those hard drives are, or, whatever that platform is from the hardware manufacturer. Again, Maxta doesn't, force you into having to replace that at 3 or 4 years because it wasn't sized big enough. You can change that on the fly. I think that's very, very important when you start looking at what we buy today. How can that be transitioned if, through a merger or an acquisition, or, another department comes down or leadership comes down and says, we want to adopt this other application, what does that message look like going back to them? Is it, well, we have to replace our environment that we bought 2 or 3 years ago, or do we have to double the size of it, and this is what it's going to cost, versus we need to make some small changes and maybe add a server, right? It's a much different conversation at that point. Now, to this slide, a little bit into the architecture, you'll notice that the Maxta software sits separate from the hypervisor. And we do that for a couple of reasons, and we do it in 2 ways. So generally, most hypervisors will sit on some type of SD card or redundant SD card in the server platforms. We usually have one SSD that we put for lack of a better term, our operating system and our metadata. It's at least 100 gigs, so most people choose like one of the 150 gig, 1 drive write per day style drives. So it's not all that expensive, but we use 1 drive for our metadata landing and our OS. And then on each host, we run a controller VM. Well, I should say on VMware, we run a controller VM. On KVM, we run as a Docker container, but it's still a controller container. That is what controls your replica factor, the data locality. It creates the Maxta global namespace that you present to the hypervisor. It also handles all of the metadata intelligence, again, per host. Now, why do we sit separately? A very common question. The reason being is that, let's say on server number 1 over here on the left, let's say that Maxta VM has a problem and locks up, right? Well, if we were, in the kernel, or if we were setting, non-abstracted from the hypervisor layer, that server would be in a failure state and it would kick off a rebuild, right? I'm sure most everybody's probably been through that. The reason we sit separately is if that, let's say that Maxta VM locks up, well, the hypervisor hasn't failed, right? So that means all the underlying HA components and all the underlying VMware or KVM components are still active. So since we ride across a private VNet within the vSwitch topology that's already set up, we'll reallocate all those read-write requests through server 2, 3, 4, however many you have. Those requests will ride across that back-end private VNet that we set up, access VMware through that channel, and then, repeats the process to send the data back out. So the workloads on the other servers will move up a little bit, but that server still stays in production. Now you go in, you restart the Maxta VM. Once it restarts, it'll auto-join itself to the cluster, and then it'll redistribute all of those workloads. The same way on that OS/metadata drive. If that drive has a problem, same process. It doesn't take the server offline. It doesn't take the server out of the cluster. It just redistributes all the read-write workload. Things continue on. You change out that drive. You're able to, with a few button clicks, you're able to make a copy of the an OS from another one of the hosts. Then once that's done, the metadata tables will all copy and get redistributed. Then it'll auto-join itself to the cluster. Same process, right? That's really, really key when you start looking at, resiliency and redundancy. Because we also, and then again, we do all of the replica factors. We do all of the, we can do rack awareness, metro clustering. Obviously, within VMware and KVM both, you can do N+1, N+2 at the hardware layer redundancy. So we really have one of the most resilient platforms out there, especially when you have hyperconvergence platforms stacked up against each other. So that is very, very key. Now, I believe the next step should be the demo. So let me share my screen. And what I'd like to do is I'm only going to take a minute or two, but I wanted to show the Maxta UI. What you're seeing here is Maxta Insight or MX Insight for VMware. If it was KVM, it would just say MX Insight for KVM. We have a tool that's not in this, but it is in the KVM. We have a migration tool that would be up here, where you can migrate through the Maxta UI from VMware over to KVM, and we assist in that migration. So if that's something that, again, as an organization, making a move away from VMware, if that's something that has been discussed or, has been thought about, Maxta can also assist with that as well. But one of the things I wanted to go over, we do monitoring, we have, all the configurations, administration, all that kind of stuff. But in order of time, what I would like to do is kind of show a lot of the pieces and parts of the settings that you can choose, whether you're creating a VM through the Maxta UI or all the pieces that would be in terms of the storage template if you were going through vCenter and wanted to do that in. So obviously you give the VM a name. You can choose folders for organizational purposes. You have, choose which server you would like it to start on. Obviously you can pull from an ISO, pretty straightforward. You choose socket count, cores, amount of memory for the VM. You'll choose network topology. Obviously on a demo, we keep this pretty straightforward. Now, here's where you can choose your replica factor, 2 or 3. And you're able to, again, you can do this per VM or per groups of VMs. If you're using like VMware templates, I think KVM calls them profiles. And then here's where you can choose your rebuild priority. So this one is very key. As drive sizes have gotten bigger over the years, Maxta sadly cannot break the laws of physics in terms of how long it takes a drive or a host to rebuild. But what we can do is we can allow you to assign per VM the order in which those blocks are rebuilt in the event you have a drive or some type of hardware failure, right? And we do this so that you're able to assign priority of, I want SQL to be primary number one, it has to come back first, so that if I lose an entire host, we start rebuilding those blocks first. That way, if I start losing drives or, you know, start having a really bad day from the rest of the hardware, I want to make sure I give, you know, that every chance of being up and resilient as possible. And then you can kind of go down the stack. Whereas VDI probably put that at 10, because more often than not, if something goes wrong, we'll just wipe the sessions and have everybody reboot up off the gold image or, you know, whatever that topology looks like. So that's where, you know, we do everything we can in terms of allowing you to assign what happens in the event of a failure so that your environment is doing what you would like it to do. Then here's where you can choose your page size. Again, we have some options here. We can also have various different compression algorithms as well as disable it entirely. And you can even turn on and off the read cache. So the read cache portion that I kind of went through earlier, in hybrid, you can turn that off if you've got some tertiary workloads that you don't want to take up in that, scenario. You want to, you know, maybe your database is really the only one you want to use that read cache. You can turn it off for everything else except for that. You hit create VM, it'll create the VM, and you are good to go. So I know that was pretty quick, but again, just wanted to kind of make sure everybody had a quick look at the Maxta UI. Now, on so if we kind of take a look, and I know I'm coming up on time here, so Maxta advantages, right? This is where it breaks it down. You manage VMs, you don't manage storage. You know, there's no what they call refresh or upgrade taxes. Basically, perpetually licensed. You can use whatever hardware vendor you want to do. You have choices on, whether it's KVM or VMware. You have choices on, your hypervisor, and there's more coming. And the key thing for me, you can run mixed workloads in the same cluster with no penalties. That really is kind of the game changer as far as that goes. We have a couple of ways you can validate. We have both hosted POCs out of Santa Clara. We sit on the Intel campus since we are an Intel-backed company. We have quarter height racks. If you can give it 1 gig connectivity and power, we can send out those racks. You're able to use those. There's a little more paperwork, a little more back end involved, but we can do proof of concepts that way as well. We also allow you to download 3 nodes of Maxta for free. It's not Maxta Lite. It is full-blown Maxta. Full feature product set. It's just community support and not production support. Feel free to reach out to myself. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help validate hardware. And if you have hardware on site you would like to use, and we can go that direction as well. So again, we urge you we're not afraid of POCs. We, tell customers every day, do a POC, put it through your own paces. Don't take our word for it. And then a little bit, like I said, I've mentioned a few times, we are an Intel-backed company. So that gives us day 0, day 1 support for all the new Intel platforms. Now, whether that's processor architecture, whether that's new drive technologies, new drive sizes, they are really, that's really kind of key, especially in data centers of today, where a lot of the pieces and components are Intel, and we're actually able to do Intel servers as well. So, whether you want NVMEs today with potentially going Optane or 3D XPoint in the future, whether you want SAS SSDs today and maybe move to NVMEs, whatever the case may be, we have support for all of those, right? And that's really, in my opinion, very, very key. Again, we don't have to run on Intel, but being Intel-backed, we have, all the underlying kind of engineering resources and capabilities to take care of whatever may be hailing. Now, before I say thank you, and I will be drawing to a close here in just a second, we don't have a slide on it, but I would like to say that we are also a member of TSANet. So from a support organization standpoint, that allows other organizations like, hardware OEMs, VMware, Red Hat, all those. They can engage Maxta if you engage them first in a Maxta environment. And then we can also, vice versa, engage them if you call Maxta first and say, instead of finger pointing, like, no, that's not us, it's VMware, or no, that's not us, that's the hardware, we're able to work, because we are a member of TSANet, in really tight conjunction, share logs, really gives, the organization and Maxta customers one phone call, two resolution, regardless of how much work is on the back end. So I just wanted to say that as kind of a finalization. So thank you very much. If there's any questions or anything I can assist with, definitely let us know, and look forward to hearing more from everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Great presentation. We do have a couple questions here for you from the audience. While I do that, I'm going to leave this poll question up. Would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the Maxta Hyperconvergence solution? I'll leave that on the screen for everyone out there in the audience to answer. So the first question here is, let's see, the first question is, how do you handle maintenance when you add new capacity to the server? Does that impact performance?
It does not impact performance, and it does not impact maintenance. So again, we are, we don't put limitations in, again, core count or storage in the box or anything along those lines. So as our recommendation is, obviously, if you're, Dell or Lenovo, whatever hardware brand is on the box, if you're going to expand, probably call, your partner of choice or your manufacturer of choice, get supported drives so that your hardware support everything stays where it needs to be. From a Maxta standpoint, it does not impact the cost nor the functionality of our support model.
Okay. And then another question here is about, is there any sort of community edition that someone could use in a lab environment to evaluate Maxta?
Yes, there is. That's what the 3 nodes with the community support, you're able to download it for free. If you go to maxta.com, there's I think it's the far right tab on the main page is Get Maxta for free, essentially. I would recommend having myself or one of my engineers validating the server hardware that you would like to put it on, just so we can meet expectations. We, obviously being Intel backed, we even have, in some cases, we've been able to send out some SSDs for customers that had, the servers were all good except the SSDs for caching just weren't, they weren't up to, they weren't on the ACL, they were just older than what they needed to be. So we've been able to send out, in some cases, those SSDs. So definitely let us know if that's something you want to do. We have the download capability there. We'd just like to validate the hardware just to make sure everything's good to go, and you can test it as long as you want to.
Okay. Well, excellent. There's some more questions for you there in the electronic Q&A to answer, but thanks so much for being on the event today, Isaac.
Thank you. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Thank you to Maxta. For more information, visit maxta.com and check out the resource on your console. All right. While I announce our next gift card winner, I'm going to leave the poll question up on the screen still. If you haven't answered that, please do so now. The 4th gift card winner on today's event is Anthony Michael from Wisconsin. Congratulations. We have one more Amazon $500 gift card to give away at the end of our next presentation. All right, I'm excited to now introduce Mr. Alan Conboy. He's with the Office of the CTO at Scale Computing. Alan, are you there?
I am. Hi. Thanks for inviting us back. I'm happy to be talking to the MegaCast crowd again.
Glad to have you back, Alan. Tell us about hyperconvergence.
Let me do this. Thanks for the introduction, but let's move into why I'm here, why Scale's here in the first place. Virtualization, historically speaking, the legacy, it really hasn't changed much. Historically, it was a SAN and its file systems or pseudo file systems, and layer 2 iSCSI data path switching, and mother-in-law server, if you will, and individual hypervisor hosts and iSCSI LUNs mapped across a network fabric as block devices across the spectrum. Long story made short, what you see on the screen here is how virtualization was built out for the last, 20 years, give or take? Well, long story made short, what you're really looking at with virtualization that caused us to build scale computing in HC3 in the first place was the realization that this is a Rube Goldberg machine. Stop and think about it. What you're dealing with here is a litany of file systems on object files, on file systems, on object files, mapped across network fabric, layered on top of the overhead of storage protocols and TCP, and all that sitting on top of the overhead of yet more object files sitting on file systems, sitting on RAID sets. This, historically speaking, was horrific. From an I/O perspective, from a complexity perspective, from a finger-pointing perspective about who's doing something wrong somewhere in the chain. Well, here at Scale, we decided that this was really the wrong approach across the board to doing highly available virtualization. You stop and think about this, and to do something just as trivial as change a period to a comma in a Word doc on a VM, you're dealing with no fewer than 7 hops coordinated through, 5 or 6 different kernels throughout the chain. It's horrifically inefficient. So what we chose to do was simple. Take a clean sheet of paper approach to how highly available virtualization actually should work. As a matter of fact, upon completion of our prototypes, we coined the term hyperconvergence in the first place, back in, late 2010, early 2011. You see, our approach to hyperconvergence is simple. Get rid of everything that didn't need to be there in the first place. Put the remainder exactly where it should be. Get rid of all of the nesting of object files on file systems on object files on file systems. Get rid of all of the translation layers and overhead, syscalls, etc. Make it simple. Make it efficient. Get rid of the complexity. Get rid of the cost. Get rid of the other players, so to speak. We built the entire architecture from the ground up, every single layer of the solution. The storage stack, the cluster orchestration stack, hypervisor integration, DR management stack, everything. Just built it in. Source code on every single layer, so there is no finger pointing to be had. And in the process, turned 7 or 8 hops coordinated through 3 or 4 or 5 different kernels into 3 hops through a single kernel. That allowed us to get rid of things like SSD being used as a caching mechanism, rather use it as a proper tier, returning efficiency that legacy approach to virtualization essentially obliterated. Now, complexity, it's ugly. Lots of vendors having to get this piece from that guy, this piece from that guy over there. Multiple layers of things that can break. The cost to administer, the cost to acquire, the cost to stand up puts it out of reach for a lot of folks. Well, not with Scale. You see, what we set out to create in creating HC3 was essentially an architecture that lets you, A, not have to think about your architecture, B, is easy enough that a kid straight out of the local community college can sit down and come up to speed on it in 15 minutes without needing a bunch of extra training. C, doesn't give ground on feature functionality. All the table stakes you expect to be there, from dedupe to compression to tiering to you name it, HA, failover, fault tolerance, DR, it's all just built in, but it's built in such a way that it doesn't require you to be a VCP and a CCNE and a SNIA certified storage engineer. Rather, your average Windows administrator is all that you really need to be. Now that simplicity directly translates into savings. Other vendors out there in the space try to sell a virtualization stack and the other component pieces at a 1,600% price premium over the cost of the gear it runs on. Not scale. You see, we set out to address the needs of the smallest of the small to the largest throughout the chain, but do it in a way that makes sense for everybody. Make it so that anybody can use it. Think virtualization for every man. Now, what this means is simple. Concepts of LUNs, gone. We do direct block placement and low-level block control through our own data management engine, Scribe. The single most efficient I/O path in storage today. There's no VSAs, there's no virtual SAN appliances, there's no extra pile of controllers in the data path. What you write goes straight to a disk, actually to more than one in parallel. Hypervisors included, just built in, minus the licensing because there is no licensing in the scale world. Well, the Microsoft guys want to get paid for their licenses, but it has nothing to do with scale. There is no equivalency in Scale's world to Essentials, Essentials Plus, Standard, Standard Enterprise, Enterprise Plus. All features, all functionality, just included in the cost of the nodes themselves. And the nodes, well, they're roughly the cost of decent servers. Cloud integration built in, made simple. Native failover, failback, the DR stack, it's all there. It's made easy. You don't need to be an expert. Also built in, the first year of support. Now, Scale handles support a little bit differently too. See, how do I want to put this? We don't believe in that concept of lead, copper, silver, gold, platinum, and unobtainium support contracts that define who's allowed to talk when. No. Everybody who gets a Scale cluster gets 24/7, 365 support, tied directly back to a tier 2 or better real, actual degreed engineer who knows what he's doing. Call him is built into every cluster out there. You're live transferred directly to a real engineer in less than 90 seconds. Full stop. All hardware, all software, all features, functionalities as we release them, simply included. We also don't play the sliding scale game of year 2, year 3, year 4 gets more expensive on support renewal. No, flat rate. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. That's in our DNA. Now, for those of you that have seen Scale before, I thought I'd throw in a couple of slides here on what's new. Top of the list, HC3 Cloud Unity. For those that are curious, go Google Compute and Scale Computing. You'll see what I mean. We've natively integrated HC3 with the Google Compute Engine, allowing nodes to be run in GCP instances that support the entire HC3 stack, allowing for our entire DR stack replication with failover and failback up to the cloud and right back out, getting rid of the legacy Chinese finger trap, if you will, that cloud is, allowing you to put the workloads where they need to be, when they need to be, how they need to be, simply with a couple of clicks. Put it up, pull it right back down. We've introduced our all-flash family nodes, as well as the hybrids that we've talked about for the last several years. We introduced our deep capacity nodes and high compute nodes in the 5150 family. Single node configurations, because, well, let's face it, HCI shouldn't require a minimum of 3. It just shouldn't. And we all know that 2-node clusters of any kind are a bad idea. With Scale, you can start with as little as a single node. Grow as you need to grow. VSS integration, real-time statistics, all the stuff that you wanted to see historically, it's all there now. But let's do this. Let's jump into a running cluster. Let you see it for yourself and go from there. son of a gun, David, the screen share option failed on me. So you know what?
Oh,
I'm just going to go ahead and jump on forward.
okay.
Cloud Unity. Rapid deployment, cost contained, grows as you need to grow, but most importantly, makes the entire Google Compute instance appear as a local resource on your local LAN using your local IP schemes. Makes it so that DR, failover, etc. doesn't require anything more than a shutdown here and start there. 2 clicks. DNS doesn't change, doesn't need to. We've implemented our own, been working with Google over the last 2.5 years, VXLAN Layer 2 overlay that makes the GCP appear on your local LAN at a local IP address. VMs don't know that anything even changed. DR doesn't get any simpler than that, and it's just built in. Now, from a pricing perspective, I wasn't kidding when I said cost controlled. Prices start as little as $7,000 a node. Mix and match to your heart's content to meet the needs from a capacity, from a growth perspective, as you need to grow on the fly. Make it simple. Now, some of the new additional things, HC3 Edge. See, with HC3, because we didn't need virtual SAN appliances, CVMs, or VSAs, we have the single most efficient approach to HCI out there. Our hardware footprint is tiny. Literally a couple of gig of RAM per node and a fraction of a core. This has allowed us to implement HC3 on things as small as the Intel NUC platform, bringing our full stack, all features, all functionality, all the way to the edge, with native replication, failover, and failback to core, all the way up to the cloud, and everywhere in between. Next new feature you might find interesting. You see that same efficiency that allows us to go big and allows us to go small and everywhere in between, allows us to do things with NVMe nobody else can get anywhere near. See, we don't have physical or virtual controllers in our data paths. We don't need them. That's the beauty of writing your own storage stack from the ground up. This has allowed us to implement from inside of virtual machines, writing directly to NVMe drives in an HC3 environment, the kind of IOPS that you only find in 7-figure solutions, done at 20 microsecond latencies, using actual databases, not custom testing apps. That's what HC3 is really all about. Making virtualization for everyone.
Great presentation, Alan. Are you ready for some questions?
Be more than happy to take a few. See if I can get the live presentation here set up and working properly again. But go ahead.
Okay. So how do most people say they have a vSphere infrastructure today? How do they make the migration to scale?
You know, it is something else we took a long, hard look at. You know, historically speaking, when you wanted to move a physical machine into a virtual world, or you wanted to move from one virtualization platform to another, a P2V or a V2V, that was a shall we say, time-consuming proposition that was a bit of a dice roll. So we decided to do the same thing to P2Vs and V2Vs that we did to legacy virtualization. Redo it. Do it the right way. We worked with a company you would know as DoubleTake. several years ago to create HC3 Move. It's an agent-based approach. Now, what this agent allows for is, without downtime, mirroring your existing virtual infrastructure into virtual machines running on your new HC3 cluster with a seamless failover and not changing the source in any way. Essentially, by installing the HC3 agent in your local legacy virtual machines running on ESX or Hyper-V or Rev or Zen, pick your choice, doesn't matter. Creating shell receiving virtual machines on your HC3 cluster. We live mirror the directory structures, the registry entries, and all new I/O as it happens into the same locations on those new HC3 VMs. The only outage window of any kind required is when you go ahead and say, cut it over. Does a graceful shutdown on the source VMs while simultaneously rebooting those HC3 target VMs, rolling in any registry changes and bringing them up as the source. Simple, easy, no interruptions, no weekend spent.
Very nice. So it can be done without any downtime even. That's impressive. What about data protection solutions when someone's using Scale for backup and recovery? What do you recommend for that?
Well, what I recommend for that is any of our partner companies layered on top of what we've already just built in. Okay? And as a matter of fact, rather than tell you, how about I show you? See, right here, this is a 3-node HC3 cluster. Node 1, Node 2, Node 3. To stand this cluster up, all you had to do was take the nodes out of the box, stick them in the rack, cable up the Cat6 or the SFPs if you're going 10 gig. Hand out the IP addresses to each individual node. Takes about a minute and a half or so. Then hit the Initialize Cluster button. Go grab yourself a cup of coffee or a Mountain Dew or a Red Bull if it's one of those days. Come back, point a browser at any one of the IPs you just handed out, you're up. Log in, drop in here to the Settings tab, supply your environmentals, who to send alerts to, where to send alerts, DNS for the site, time servers, you know, the basics. Drag and drop your ISO files in, your image files. Add individual users so we can track who's doing what to who, you know, that sort of stuff. Back to your main screen, create yourself a brand new virtual machine. Call this one, say, 11 Alpha. Give it a functional description if you like. Tag it in with other similar groups of virtual machines if you want to. Don't have to if you don't want to. It's for bulk actions. You know, start all my VDI instances, snapshot all my databases, etc. Tell us how many cores you want it to have, what the RAM footprint needs to be. Here, we'll give this guy 8 gig. How many and what size virtual hard drives, which ISO to boot from, and you're done. Now, the purpose of showing you this was you asked specifically about data protection. Well, DR is just built in. Show you what I mean. This 11 Alpha virtual machine, every block of data that he commits to a virtual hard drive is actually committed in real time to a minimum of 2 separate drives on 2 separate nodes in the cluster. Both copies are used active-active. Blocks are actually round-robin chained to clustered across all of the drives and all the nodes. Okay? That way we can lose any drive anywhere at any time, any entire node anywhere at any time, and everything just keeps going. That helps. But that's not DR in and of itself, is it? No, the next layer back from that built-in data reduction and data management strategy is, of course, snapshotting, point in time. Get me back quickly to a point in time prior to an event. Well, that's really no more complex than saying, you know what? Let's create a schedule. You see, snapshotting with Scale, again, because we built every single layer, it's a little bit different. We support up to 6,000 snapshots per virtual machine with no performance impacts, all chained to clustered and dereferenced, but every single snapshot directly clonable, startable, runnable. For example, here's a schedule that we create. Jump back to our VM and say, you know what? Let's pick a snapshot schedule. Pick that same one. Update. Now he automatically starts collecting those delta changes points in time. But notice the capacity utilization doesn't go up. It's all dereference pointer based. But even though I can tolerate local component failure, multiple drive failures, node failures, etc., and even though I can fall back to any point in time prior to an event by doing nothing more complex than hitting clone and start. Here, we'll do one real quick on one of my production virtual machines so you can see what I mean. Jump back to a point in time prior to an event, clone, clone, close. Won't affect the source, point in time now started, no extra disk consumed. But that's still not DR. You see, DR by definition means the entire site just got wiped off the map, either logically or physically in some cases. Well, built into every HC3 cluster is the ability for any VM to replicate to any HC3 target to which it has a route, whether that's a single node across site, whether that's a full-blown secondary cluster in a colo or another data center, whether that's an instance running on the Google Compute Engine. It's no more complex than come in here, say, set up replication. Who should we send it to? Let's send it to my Lucas DR cluster. Within seconds, that instance snapped, an individual point in time created, and that data is replicating across the wire. Failover, fail back, bidirectionally tracked on every changed data block. It's all there, but it's made simple. For example, if we jump over to that Lucas cluster, guess what's already there? Right here. Doing those failovers, site A, site B, doesn't matter where from or where to. Literally no more complex than what you just saw me do here. Clone, start. Site A gets wiped off the face of planet Earth. I point my browser at site B. Jump to the VMs in question that I need to bring up in whatever order. Clone, clone, close. And here over the next 4.5, 5 seconds, fire right up. Production now moved to site B. Now here's the interesting thing. MSRP on this 3-node cluster we're playing with, straight list, about 25 grand all in, and that's at list price before you play the poke the sales guy in the eye and steal his wallet game. But this is the same cluster that does everything we've talked about thus far that dedupe's already built into. That is in real time, as we're speaking, sustaining happily around 24,000, 25,000 IOPS. And that's not its limit. Not even close. Closer to double that. At a price point that is less than you would have spent on a halfway decent SAN not more than a few years ago. Does that really kind of cover the gamut of your questions on DR schemes?
It does. With one clarification, a question just came in. Are all those features built in?
Yes, and we don't charge anything extra. All features, all functionalities included in just the cost of the nodes.
Very impressive, Alan. Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
So,
well,
that, in a nutshell, is HC3.
Excellent. Well, there's a few more questions for you there in the queue. Thank you so much for being on today, Alan.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
All right. If you have questions for Alan, go ahead and enter them now. And also check out the poll question that's on the screen right there. Would you like to be one of the first to learn more about the scale computing hyperconvergent solution? If so, just click sure, and I'll leave that up on the screen while I announce our final $500 gift card winner. That gift card is going out to Jimmy Arcade from California. Congratulations to Jimmy, and congratulations to all the other gift card winners. That's all we have for prizes on the event today, but I do want to point out a few things before we wrap it up, and that is, first off, You can learn more about 10 on Tech. That's our technology podcast over on iTunes. Just subscribe there. It's a short technology podcast about the most innovative technology solutions. You can register for all of our EcoCast and MegaCast and webinar events over at events.actualtechmedia.com. We have new events popping up over there every week. And I hope that you'll join us for our next EcoCast event, which is next week. It's the Virtualization Optimization EcoCast on January 24th of next week. If you're interested in hyperconvergence, I'm very sure you're going to be interested as well in virtualization optimization. So I hope you'll check that event out as well. That's all we have for today on the Converged and Hyperconverged EcoCast. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.